have a roll call, please?
Mr. Allen.
Here.
Mrs. Harold.
Here.
Mr. Irons.
Here.
Mrs. LeVere Wright.
Here.
Mr. Wright will be absent with prior notice. Or he'll be late with prior notice.
Late.
Sorry.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody out to our new Falcon Virtual Academy building. I'm so excited that we got to have this here this time. And ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So 3.0, approval of agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, a vote, please.
Mr. Allen.
Aye.
Mrs. Harold.
Aye.
Mr. Irons.
Aye.
Mrs. LeVere Wright.
Aye.
Motion carries. On to 4.0, consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, a vote, please.
Mr. Allen.
Aye.
Mrs. Harold.
Aye.
Mr. Irons.
Aye.
Mrs. LeVere Wright.
Aye.
Motion carries. On to 5.0, board update. Do we want to start over there with you guys? Brett, do you want to start? I know you just walked in, but did you have anything?
You know, we're getting ready to start our annual audit on Monday, and that's always kind of a landmark, a big in our annual fiscal cycle to get done. So, believe it or not, we're looking forward to that because it is a good validation on the practices that we have. And if you recall, we got some great feedback, from the state last year for how we performed in that. So, looking forward to repeating that performance.
Good job.
Sorry.
All right.
First, I would like to congratulate everyone who has worked so hard to bring this building to completion and to help Falcon Virtual Academy move over here. We actually had 2 different groups from out of state come yesterday to tour the facility in looking at how we're doing this and the possibility of implementing it in their districts. And to have people from out of state and from 2 very diverse places come and spend, I believe I spent over 4 hours with them, with a whole group of staff from the district, going through what was working, what things we saw happening next, and how we could see this changing education. It was really a phenomenal conversation, and I think it was great validation to everyone who's been a part of this process. So I think it's important for everyone to recognize how much interest there is from outside of Colorado in this. So it's not just something that people are paying attention to here, but we're having people all over the nation inquire. The second is a commentary on SEAC, the Special Education Advisory Council. One of the things I wanted to point out is the level of staff dedication we've had in that process. There are plenty of parents who've been involved in it, but there's also quite a few staff. I personally, as a parent, am on the planning subcommittee, and of the 6 of us who consistently come to meetings, 5 are staff members. This is not something they're paid for. This is not something they're being recognized for in their evaluations. This is time that our staff are giving on their own to try and find a way to better serve our students. And I think we need to really be recognizing the amount of time they're giving and the effort they're putting into that. These are committees that met over the summer. They're meeting in the evenings. They're meeting on Saturdays. They're taking away time from their families and their other commitments to truly try and say what are the best ways that we can educate all of our kids. And so I think it's really important to recognize those staff as well.
I think to dovetail with what Marie said, if you had walked in this building in December or January, and then you walked in 10 minutes ago, you would not be able to recognize the difference. I think Kim, Dave, all of her staffs have done amazing things to this building to get it ready in the length of time that they've really had. I do have to thank one outside person who probably saved us 60 days. And in the original approval process, Amy Latham, our county commissioner, got rather heavily involved and literally saved us months in allowing or helping us through the approval process, shall we say, with the Planning Commission. So I have to thank her, in addition to everybody in the virtual environment that has just, frankly, everybody in the district. Everybody has pulled together to make this happen. And this is an example of how, if we work together as a district, we can make things happen. Now, I got one more area, and that has to do with SEAC too.
Put them on the clock.
And I know it's very important to Marie, and it's especially important to me. I am the board representative to SEAC. Last Monday, Krista Casa, who is a consultant from UCCS involving inclusion, gave a presentation to the executive committee for SEAC. Lasted about half an hour. Next week, date, I'm not sure. I think it's next Wednesday. She will give a 2 or 3 hour presentation on inclusion to our entire special education staff. After that, there is a plan to have a presentation to our administration, to the ILs, to principals and assistant principals, so that everyone really begins to understand what inclusion is and what our thought process is. And I have one more thing I have to read, and this is from Krista, and she's the author. So think about what this statement is, and this is kind of her goal, her attitude. This is the overarching approach. Disability is another form of human diversity. And that's the way she is approaching our special education and how we offer, or deal is the wrong word, how we support our students who are involved in special education, and how we will eventually evolve to that total inclusion process. And so we're just beginning, and it is a long-term process. 3 or 4 years, we will get there. But this statement is our new attitude about special education and the future.
I'm sorry. I had one other quick thank you that needed to go out. It is on a smaller scale, but still fairly important for anyone who has to drive by Meridian Ranch during pickup time. I wanted to thank Monty Lammers, as well as developer of Meridian Ranch, for working together to come up with a process that has truly made that far, far better. As someone who has to drive through there to get my preschooler every day, I can tell you it is a phenomenally different process, and that is because of a continued collaboration between our district and the developer of Meridian Ranch. And I think that developer has done quite a bit for our district, and as we come and say, help us problem solve, he continues to be open to working with us. And I think it's a great example of working together, especially in an environment like Colorado where developers don't really have to. And so I want to make sure we thank him for putting that road through early for us, for putting the bus route through the back, for helping with the parking lot so that we could alleviate some of those parking problems, and for Monty for taking the initiative to approach him and to help problem solve that. I can tell you as a parent, it's phenomenally different, and I think anyone else who has to drive through there will probably say the same thing. It's much safer for our kids too.
Madam President, put me on a timer, please.
Yes, sir. Right there.
Good evening. Welcome. I want to continue to echo what my peers have said about this building here and the great work that has went in for this district. But it could not have been possible without the taxpayers' dollars to make this happen. And we, as a board, would like to thank you. This is your work. This is your dollars that we are setting in today, and this is for our students. And I was in the building yesterday, and they were excited about what they were doing in here. I've been out of school, and I won't tell you how long. I was excited. It was fun being in here, all the different colors and things of that nature. I even sat in a couple of seats and rolled around and, with the kids and had a good time too. So thank you, the taxpayers, for making this happen. I would ask you as a one-time soldier that you would, and I think it's just honor that you do that you keep those service members that lost their lives in the protection of this nation a couple of days ago in the country of Libya. I wish that you would keep them and their loved ones in prayer as we as a nation mourn their loss. And as we call upon our government, with no disrespect to anyone, to strike back forcefully and understand that we cherish American lives and we won't tolerate that. So it's been a great day in the district. I've watched I watched Miles with the Broncos. Had time with him yesterday. Took pictures with him. Healthy thing. The district is doing great things. We have a lot further to go, but the district is doing great things. They're working hard. They're making things, and the children are happy. Okay, the educators are in there, and I'm ecstatic. And hey, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not an educator. I'm a soldier and an ex-cop. They have no idea half the time while I bumble through here, I ask folks about different things. But it's exciting to me to not be an educator, to get inside the facilities and watch what the educators are doing with your children. It's an amazing job, and I like to take my hats off of them. It's a difficult job, but they are doing a phenomenal job out there, and I just want to say thank you. We are here to serve. We are here to serve. We are here to serve. So bring your concerns, bring your thoughts, bring your recommendation, bring your criticism. We have open ears, open hearts, and open minds. We are a community. We cannot survive without each other. So welcome.
And I have a lot of business, so mine isn't as fluffy as everybody. I have to recap other stuff. That's kind of what I do. Just to update everybody what happened at our last work session on August 22nd, Brett Ridgway presented information regarding district modular building logistics. It was the consensus of the board at that time to get more information and put an RFP out on a used pod for Evans International Elementary, and also to proceed with putting the bathrooms back in the Woodman Hills modulars. So we are looking at some type of a modular space for some of our schools that are in need of it. The board is in the process of reviewing the applications for the COO position, and we are getting our top candidates ready to interview here in the next week, hopefully. The board will be holding community meetings, which I hope to see some of you at, on September 20th at Falcon High School at 6:30, and at Sand Creek on September 24th at 6:30. And it's going to be the board. We'll all be there. It won't be set up like this. It'll be very informal. We'll all be scattered around the commons area, and just asking people to come and talk to us. Some of the input that we're hoping to get is the CEO position is available, and we are looking at that job description, and we want some input from the community and our staff on where they see that position going. Okay, I said all that. What else?
That was pretty fluffy.
All of our fall sports are starting, and I'm a huge fan of all of our fall sports. I've been to the volleyball, football, and soccer so far. Love it. Excited. I love this time of year with that when our schools start back and all of our sports start in. So I hope if you have a chance you get out and see them. It's been fairly nice so far, so it would be, this is the best time to see them, is at this time of year. And just in and out of the schools. One other thing that I just want to bring up is Big Lots, a new store is opening over by Lowe's and that area. And their grand opening is going to be next week. And they are donating $2,500 to Horizon. So I'm excited to be able to be there. And that's a really positive thing for a business to come and support our schools. So I hope everybody supports them in their new location there. One last thing I wanted to do was have Kim come up and say something real quick. I'll give up a little of my time. Not that I haven't spoken up, sorry. So this is Kim McClellan. She's the iConnect innovation leader for this zone group. It's not really a geographic location. They're all over.
Thanks. Dave and I have a little something for a few people who've really made an impact on this project. So I'm going to read from a speech because I knew I'd get emotional. So I didn't want to get emotional, so I need to make sure I read this piece of it. So Dave and I do want to welcome everyone tonight to a school that is the future. This project has been a vision with the purpose of making a difference in students' lives and to meet the needs of how they learn and what they are begging for in education today. This is to nurture them in a place that allows them to achieve, to be creative, to collaborate, and to engage in their learning, and to become problem solvers of our future. I do believe that Falcon School District 49 is a leader in making this difference as well, not only with this school, but with our innovation zones. A lot of credit goes to all of the other zones because they're making a big difference as well, just as much as the iConnect zone is. So hats off to all the zones and all the innovative problem solving that you all are doing as well. I heard a quote this morning on my way to work because it was Neil Armstrong's memorial service today, and I was listening to Fox News on my on the car ride in, and I have about a 30-minute drive. And they were talking about Jack Kennedy and a famous quote that he had, and it was, "We should choose to go to the moon not because it is easy, but because it is hard." And this wasn't an easy project, to say the least. The school was not easy to create or to prove its worth. And truthfully, some people thought it couldn't and wouldn't happen. Many people worked endless hours to make this dream come true, and I assure you, it will make a difference in not just our community, but the students around the country. I knew this was going to happen. Dave and I would personally like to thank the following people for their dedication, collaboration, and endless efforts to make this building the success it is. Number one, I'd like to first thank Melissa Andrews, who come up. I want to give you something, or Dave and I both do. Selena and Brett. Selena and Melissa and Brett. Man, and Dave and I have been in so many meetings really collaborating together to think about what would fit in this area, and Brett helped us find the finances to make this happen, and along with the board, which you all have something as well, but Melissa and Selena, man, they put in some really long hours, and we shared in moments that we were like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? And we worked together, and thank you, ladies, for all of your effort in pushing the group to get to where to make this happen today. So we really appreciate that. And then we'd also like to thank the Board of Education.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And then this one's for Chris when he gets here. Just thank you, board, for believing, for taking a chance on this project, because you really did take a chance on this project. And thank you for believing in knowing that it would be a success. So if it wasn't for you all as well, we wouldn't be standing here today. And I think Dave wants to say something as well, really fast.
Thank you.
There was no way I couldn't say something with this microphone sitting here. After setting all of this stuff up, I needed to say something at least and make sure that it works. I did want to thank some of our staff who showed up tonight. They are extremely busy. We're all heading to volleyball games and that, but some made a real effort to come out tonight and support us as well. And I have one beautiful opportunity to tell everybody that's in the audience. I know the question that runs through everyone's head is, why does a virtual school need a building? And so as you hear people say that, I encourage you to call me, to stop by, to come into this building, and we will show you what a blended school looks like and what the future of education looks like. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This one. Pick everybody up. Okay.
Well, good evening. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Don Beezer, and I am the Acting Chief Education Officer while the Board of Education works to hear from you and define the process. And so I'm excited to be here tonight. That's a tough act to follow. I remember seeing the schematics and the drawings for this place and thinking, wow, that is so cool. And thinking about my days as a middle school and high school principal, the good trouble that I could have created in a facility like this to help kids learn would have been a lot of fun. So I'm excited to support our learners from this position. The only way to follow an act like that, besides give me a high sign if the Bears score, but the game's on. But other than that, if they don't let me know. No, the only way to follow that is to talk about our great educators, and I want to talk about 3 of them this evening. First, I want to talk about Angela Mullen, a teacher at Ridgeview Elementary School, who has been invited to present at the National Council for History Education Conference in Virginia. She is one of only 2 educators from our region selected for this opportunity. So congratulations to her. Secondly, Todd Matea, a Sand Creek High School teacher, was selected to offer a workshop at the National Society of Engineers Conference in November. He'll be co-presenting with an engineer from HP to discuss the importance of educating young people in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and math, because Todd has been a huge advocate in working with business partnerships to ensure STEM education in our district. And finally, Falcon Elementary School teacher Melanie Delifka is one of only 2 state-level finalists for the Presidential Awards for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching. This is considered one of the highest honors for teachers of math and science, and nominees are considered leaders in the field. Her application will now be reviewed at the national level, and she'll find out in the spring where she lands. But regardless of where she lands in the spring, this is an incredible accomplishment. And I think these 3 teachers are just a small sampling of the phenomenal educators that we have in Falcon School District. And so I don't believe any of them are here this evening. Are any of you here this evening? We will be bringing them later on to formally be recognized by the Board of Education. But in their absence, I think we would be remiss if we did not give them a round of applause. So with that, I was just joking about the Bears. I have my personal cell phone, my personal iPad, and my work MacBook, and I believe they made CCS block any access to ESPN or the NFL Network. So I'll just have to live with that tonight. So 0-0, thank you. Awesome. Okay, I'm done.
Okay. Thank you all. All right, we will move on to open forum.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed one of the most important things. I apologize. I can never stop talking once they put one of these in front of me. This is really important. Earlier, at the end of the summer, the Board of Education indulged us as district administrators in agreeing to work with us to work with a group called the Flippin' Group. It's a group that we first engaged as a school district about 6 or 7 years ago to do a program in a number of our schools called Capturing Kids' Hearts. And they operate from the premise of we cannot capture a child's mind until we capture their heart. But they also do a significant amount of important work with the military, businesses, and education, and specifically leadership in education. And they're going to conduct what they call a leadership blueprint training with all of us, the Board of Education, district leadership, and the innovation leaders. And all of us are so excited to do this. This was born out of a book study that we did together, and just talking about how can we improve trust and create an atmosphere of trust and risk-taking to do the very best for your children. So that will be the 25th through 27th of September, so we're very excited about that. Okay, I promise I'm really done.
Okay, good. So on to open forum. The board is desirous to hear the comments of the community. We invite you to address the board concerning district issues. When appropriate, we will answer your comments after you finish your 3-minute speech and take your seat. No charges or complaints against individuals shall be made. Defamatory or abusive remarks or profanity shall be considered out of order and shall not be tolerated. So we thank you for participating in the open forum. And our first one is Joni Chapman.
Hi, my name is Joni Chapman, and I am the music teacher at Odyssey Elementary. And I would like to formally invite you to the Colorado Music Educators Association Conference that will take place on January 24th. Over 120 groups auditioned to be a part of the state music conference. My choir at Odyssey, grades 2 through 5, got accepted to sing. We are one of 4 elementaries that were accepted. And so it's a very big honor for us to go. I will be taking 107 kiddos to Colorado Hall at the Broadmoor, and we will be singing 6 or 7 songs. The composers, or 2 of the composers of the piece of music, a couple of the pieces of music that we will be doing will be present also. We've invited them and they will be there, they're presenting, but also let them know that we will be performing some of their things. We are the first group from Falcon District's history that has ever been accepted to sing. Quite a few, thank you. Quite a few groups have auditioned, but we are the first one from Falcon that has actually been accepted. So this is a very big honor, and we would love for you to join us there. And I will be sending a reminder out later, because if you would like to come, then you have to have a badge, so like a little ticket. So I will send you a reminder, and then you can just respond through that if you're able to go. So thank you very much.
Is your logistical piece already in place to help you do that, to make this, I mean, as far as getting them there, your logistical piece? You need?
Excuse me. Yes, I have the students who participate. They do pay a small fee that includes the T-shirt and transportation and things there, and so that is in order. Pam Wire, my principal, has also agreed to pay for the programs, because we have to have really nice programs, so she's going to do that. And it's a very big honor for our school and our zone and our district to have something very positive come out. And we are the only ones from Colorado Springs actually that are performing. All the other ones are from way up north, and we're the only ones that are going to be there.
If there's anything this board can do, get through your IL up to the Chief Education Officer and let us know.
I will.
So we can make this a memorable for the district, for the children and the district. We'll do what we get, okay?
Thank you.
Well, and 3 of us actually, or no, 2 of us actually in the end, right, actually had an opportunity to hear your choir at the Heroes Day. And I have to say, we both realized after we did our board update, neither of us mentioned, and it was a wonderful day. You guys did a great job recognizing all of the people who impact our children's lives. And I thoroughly enjoyed the choir. I was giving them thumbs up every time, because I was sitting right next to a group of people.
And that was only 17 of them. 107. So, thank you very much.
If you need a new member, let me know. I can hum a little tune also.
Mr. Allen, I didn't realize you had a vocal ability.
All right, next up is Haley Bratton. She's a student, it looks like, at Falcon.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Haley Bratton, and I am a senior at Falcon High School. I'd like to thank you all for your time tonight, as hopefully we begin a dialogue between the district and those at D49 and Falcon High School serve. I would like to bring the new standards-based grading system to attention. This system has been rapidly implemented without a true understanding by faculty, students, or parents. There were several stories of students who missed 1 or 2 items on an assignment and received an unsatisfactory or marginal grade. Despite the best efforts to maintain consistency from teacher to teacher, this system allows an incredible amount of subjectivity. A teacher may grade a test to be an A or an S, and another teacher may grade the same piece of work as an M. A student can get a different grade depending on which teacher evaluates the test or assignment. The system is very subjective and not fair to the students. If it was a traditional percentage-based system, attaining consistency would be much easier. If the point of this new system is to prepare students for college, then why aren't colleges using this system? This seems to like an acceptable way to grade elementary students, but high school students that are preparing for college? This grading system is so confusing that Falcon High School has changed our eligibility criteria for student athletes. It is now acceptable to maintain eligibility with one F or I or less than 60%, whichever one it is. If this system was truly understood by administration and faculty, would this criteria change be necessary? This change in student eligibility requirements seems to indicate that Falcon High School's administration understands this system may not be the best way to score our students' progress. If this system was understood by the administration and faculty, would the eligibility of several student athletes change after the Monday grade check? In closing, we have implemented a system that no one understands well enough to explain or implement properly. In the end, the students at Falcon High School are the ones to pay the price for the poor planning and implementation of this system. I hope that those who have the ability to make changes to this grading system are listening to those in the community who are so greatly affected by this change at Falcon High School. Thank you all for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
There will be a response to the standard-based grading, but they want to get through everybody's comments before they do that, just so you know. Delphia McCullen?
I am so sorry. I didn't have comments. I thought that was just a signing sheet.
Oh, okay. You don't have.
I'm just worried about
That's okay.
Thanks for coming tonight, and I hope you can hear what we're going to be working on to help with this. Okay. Ellen Duckers.
Most of you know me. The few that don't, I'm Ellen Duckers. I'm a grandparent in this district. I've been coming to board meetings for 24 years, and this has been another wonderful milestone here. When I moved here 24 years ago, we only had one high school, and we built more and more buildings, and it was awesome. And this is another awesome one. So when I write my check every year for my taxes, I'll be thinking about you. I love it. I just love the school. I mean, you guys did an awesome job. I love all of you guys. I love all of you guys, all the employees. And I love you. All I can say is I love you.
Thank you.
And another thing I have to say, I'm going to miss Becky dearly. I've known her for 24 years. She's always done an awesome job, great personality and everything. And I think Doug can fill the job. He has always done a good job. I mean, I've been here for 24 years, as long as I've seen you guys and you. And I think Doug would do a great job filling this spot. So do it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ellen. Okay, now, Carrie Lukens. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to start by Haley. Very, very good job. You can be proud of yourself as a very beautiful, eloquent young woman. As a parent with children at all levels of the district, I'd like to know how we can learn and help if this change is going to be in effect for long term for the standard-based grading. The community as a whole does not understand it, and there was not ample education for the parents, the students, and I believe the teachers as well before we processed to it. When teachers are basing summative grades on one individual problem, then that is a problem for individual students because it's a pass or fail. It's not a percentage base, and it's detrimental to the individual child's overall grade based off of a portion of a problem or an entire problem. There needs to be grade training, in my opinion, for all people involved, along with Haley, that if the educators cannot be on the same track and change the eligibility requirements week to week for our student athletes, that's a big problem. So that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Christina LePage.
Hi, thanks for listening to us. Mine is on the grading as well. New freshman in the high school. My concern is I have a child that's very smart, he's always had the A/B average, and just in the first couple of weeks, his grades are coming to B's and C's because it is based on a test. One test is not based on their cumulative, everything they're doing, and they're very unclear what they're being tested on. My son basically made a D on a test for not showing his work that he wasn't aware that he had to show. So when you have a child going from straight A's to B and C averages, I don't understand how this is preparing them for college. This is being recorded. This is what colleges will look at. And you're taking an A student and making them into a BC student on a grading system that no one understands. I think it really needs to be reevaluated, maybe suspended until everyone has a clear view of what is expected, not just every individual teacher can set up their own system. When a kid goes from class to class, 7 classes, and each teacher has a separate system, but then their grades are based on the same system, it's not clear to anyone. I think teachers, parents, and students are all confused. So I would like to see maybe a suspension in this system until there's a greater understanding. If it is such a great system, maybe just suspend it, put it on hold. Don't affect children's college eligibility in the future based on a system that no one understands. I understand how they're saying homework is just reviews and everything, but they do have 7 classes and they do have homework and they do spend a lot of time. My son leaves the house at 7 o'clock in the morning, comes home at 7 o'clock at night. He is in the football. He is still maintaining what I would think would be straight A's based on what he's doing. But a teacher that takes, oh, you didn't show your work, you now have a D average. You now have a C average because all your work doesn't count. Only the 2 tests you've taken count. And I don't want to see his college be affected by a system that none of us understand. So that's all I have to say.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Our last one is Herb Klump.
Thank you. My name is Herb Klumpy. I have a son in Meridian Ranch, and I'd like to address the board and the people concerning the hiring position and the bus service. I have your Falcon flyer of a couple of months ago stating that, or at the beginning of the year, that the district was forced to reduce the general fund budget by $14 million compared to last year. And now, to make it short, I only have 3 minutes. It seems to me you can bring back the no-cost bus service and not hire a CEO or a COO. You say here that you got rid of some administrative staff and you protected 40 teachers. That to me is the crux. We need the teachers more than anything. We can do without a CEO, we can do without a COO, and that can take care of or be taken care of later. Right now, the protection of the students with good driving and good bus service is more imperative to me than a COO or CEO. If a CEO or COO makes the decision to cut a position, they should cut themselves first. Leaders are responsible ultimately. So if they're willing to do that, cut themselves first, and we can keep our teachers, we can keep our administrative staff, and we can keep our bus service. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to let Dawn address the standard-based grading with.
I think I hear a couple of common themes. First of all, we had heard wind that there might be a few visitors regarding the standards-based grading. And so I learned a long time ago that it's really important in matters like this to one, acknowledge that, first of all, if we didn't communicate as well as we should have related to what the implications of this switch would be, etc., then I'll own that and I apologize. And as the owner of that, then the second thing that I would say is tonight we hear you loud and clear, and tonight was for us to understand you, not for us to be understood. And so what I would like to ask from you is that you allow me to gather with the leadership from Falcon Zone and Falcon High School and come back at the work session on the 26th of September with concrete answers to the number of issues that you've brought up and requests that were made this evening. And so tonight was for us to understand your concerns. You can certainly contact me in the next 2 weeks, or Mr. Lammers and Ms. Thomas and the Falcon Zone to just, if there's other thoughts that we need to consider as we work together, and then we will fashion our response and come back with our plan of action to address your concerns.
When will, Mr. Beecher, when will that be?
That's the 26th. That's Wednesday night. Wednesday night at the board work session.
It's an open session?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Absolutely. No, yeah, we want you to be there to hear our response. So
September 26th,
yes.
at what time?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
And it's a work session? It should be 6 o'clock out at the main office out in the Falcon area.
Yes.
Yes, sorry.
One just general information, sorry I didn't address that up there. The late change to the location, to this location last night, the address was put online wrong, so a lot of people could be looking for it and not be able to find it. It was put as 6133 instead of 6113.
Yes, and we heard that, and so we actually corrected it at the very start here. We apologize for that mistake as well.
Sorry about that. I didn't see that. I want to thank everybody for speaking tonight, and we're going to move on to, did you want to say something? This is the hiring?
Yeah. In the bus fee, how do he get his question answered?
Does anybody want to address the
Mr. Hill?
Clumpy?
Mr. Clumpy?
Does somebody want to talk to him after the meeting? Brett?
I'll speak with you after the meeting.
Okay.
I'll listen.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, I got
No problem.
off thinking of something else. All right. On to 7.0, our action items. 7.01, approval of calendar change.
I move to approve the modification to Sand Creek Innovation Zone 2012-2013 calendar as requested by the Sand Creek Innovation Zone leadership team.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, a vote, please.
Mr. Allen.
Aye.
Mrs. Harold.
Aye.
Mr. Irons.
Aye.
Mrs. Levere Wright.
Aye.
Motion carries. Just so you know, typically when we get a portion of the action items, we've already talked about them at 2 prior meetings. So when you hear us later in the meeting talking about different discussion items, they will move up at the next meeting to action items. That's why this part is just real business-like right here. 7.02, approval of revision of some policies.
I move to approve the revision of policy KHC and regulation KHCR, distribution, posting of non-curricular materials.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, a vote, please.
Mr. Allen.
Aye.
Mrs. Harold.
Aye.
Mr. Irons.
Aye.
Mrs. Levere Wright.
Aye.
Motion carries. I'm so used to a fifth person. Sorry. I'm a little slow tonight. 7.03, which is approval of our resolution for Constitution Day.
I move to approve the resolution for Constitution Week as follows. Whereas Falcon School District 49 recognizes the importance of the Constitution in the development of our country, and whereas Falcon School District 49 is dedicated to providing a quality education for the students, and whereas it is appropriate for Falcon School District 49 to endorse the observance of National Constitution Week as an opportunity to support better understanding of our nation's history and culture. Now, therefore, we, the Falcon School District 49 Board of Education, proclaim September 17th through 21st, 2012, National Constitution Week.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? I'm excited to always honor history in our district. So, a vote, please.
Mr. Allen.
Aye.
Mrs. Harrell.
Aye.
Mr. Irons.
Aye.
Mrs. Revere Wright.
Aye.
Motion carries. That was all of our action items for tonight. Now it's all information and discussion. So first up is 8.01, the preliminary enrollment update. Who's doing that?
I presented enrollment numbers last month for what we
Your
had.
mic must not be on.
Mic's on.
Okay, sorry. Last month I presented the preliminary, the earliest enrollment numbers we had right after the start of school. We've taken a poll as well last week and this week. Our numbers continue to hold steady right at the budget level. So we don't have any significant increase or deviation from the budget.
Which is good.
Yeah.
We like more kids, but okay. All right, 8.02, Innovation Leader Evaluation Document Update. Paul is here.
Mr. Anderson.
I didn't see him
Good
back
evening,
there.
Paul. Hiding in back. Good evening. Good evening. Well, I'm here to give an update on the Innovation Leader Evaluation process, and I'll speak to it as a process rather than just the tool. That's, I think, part of what's been discussed is what's the evaluation tool going to look like. That certainly it is a big piece of what the work needs to entail. But I'd like to talk a little bit more about the process that we'll go through to get to building an evaluation tool and process. So I'm working with our acting CEO primarily in getting this going, and as a starting point, using the existing administrator evaluation tool that's been in place. And I think that one of the glaring things that's lacking in that tool is anything about innovation. So clearly that'll be one of the key objectives is going to be to figure out what's the best way to incorporate innovation into the IL evaluation tool and process. I think in speaking to innovation in particular, I'm still learning. I understand that there are innovation plans, though, and it seems to me that much of what we evaluate needs to tie back to those original plans. So we'll be looking to incorporate those pieces into it. And I think also, as much as we can, to focus on things that are measurable. And again, I'm hoping that within the innovation plans we see specific measures, whether they're targets or timeframes or specific outcomes that were projected or anticipated, that we'd be evaluating those results as well. In the existing tool, there are really important things that we ought to be looking at, including leadership, some things related to service, and
Communication.
Communication, thank you. That's a very good one. Thank you, Don. So I think those are going to be important components for us to continue to include. So as we work to develop that, we'll look at what adjustments we need to consider for those criteria related that apply specifically to an innovation leader. From the standpoint of what do the tool or tools include, let me back up and say what elements might the process include? Well, I think there I'd recommend that we look at some sort of a self-evaluation process where leaders look back on what they were charged with and that they give some evaluation of how they did. I recommend that there would be some inputs that we might call 360 type input, where we have feedback or input not only from the person they report to, but also from peers or from others who they work with in the course of their positions. That might include some of the business directors and so on. Another element that we're looking into is ways that we can not only simplify the process. Evaluation processes are often cumbersome and too long and just require putting together pages and pages of documents that really end up that don't necessarily add lots of value. So I think it's going to be important for us to focus on what things add value to the evaluation process. So it isn't necessarily length, but it's impact and clarity and those sorts of things. I think we ought to look at some technology, ways that technology might help us with making the tool simpler to use. Could also be used to collect ongoing data as we build out a process that should carry forward in years to come. The last piece I'll speak to is the timeline. In the IL contracts call for a contract renewal decision by February 1st, 2013. So just backing up from that, I think it's reason we ought to say that we'll have evaluations completed and presented or discussed by January 25th. That gives us a week then for any finalization related to those contract decisions. And then backing up, coming back this way, we are scheduled to I think we're planning on September 26th at the work session to bring a draft tool. And that I think will be pretty rough, but I think it'll show the board what direction we're suggesting, and it'll be a good tool for it'll be at a point where we can have some good discussion about what it ought to do for us and what it should look like. I recommend that we also have in this process a session or an opportunity for the ILs to comment on it and to see how it's coming together, and they may have some ideas about how it can help them, and it can be an effective tool for evaluation as well as development into the future. Any questions?
I do. Is there something that the ILs are counseled prior to the evaluation, where they kind of know where they're moving? There's some type of prior monthly, quarterly thing looked at in place. And have you ever heard of the CAPE system? When I was with the sheriff office, that's how they evaluated it. It was a CAPE system. It was already into the computer base. If you made a citizen happy on a traffic stop and they called in and said what a great guy you were, they put it in. And if you upsetted them and they called it in, so it was kind of a tracking point, and it's a lot less paper. Okay, I hate killing trees, so we can do things. So if you would, look at that way, you can track, and they know where they're going, and they know before they get home from the movie, they'll know if the house has been robbed, and then they won't go there.
Yeah,
that's a Southern boy analogy of it.
Henry, to go along with what you're driving at, and Paul, you've had experience in the private sector. I know, because I've used various systemized review processes, and we may want to look at that long term to simplify this whole thing. That's a place to go.
It sure is, I am familiar with that. I have never worked with it, but I have heard of it.
Great system out there,
Okay.
I got pretty good evaluation out of it, so it must be good.
It worked for you.
Well, we have talked about the real-time feedback, and one of my core values as the supervisor, is that nothing positive nor negative would go into, whether that's a paper file or an electronic system, that I didn't personally talk with the innovation leader about. We've adopted an agreement this year in how we do business. We're calling it very simply no surprises.
And that system also allows for the rated party to sit down after he's been counseled by his supervisor. He can sit down and comment on it also, and it's all captured there, and it kind of rates itself, as a collected data. So,
well, I think the other idea that you're getting at is about the building into our process an expectation that a supervisor has the kinds of conversations that Don is talking about.
No surprises.
That are, and not only no surprises, but it's just important to have, if we want some correction or to pass on positive feedback, it has to be timely to be most effective.
Great.
And we owe that to people, and I would say not only for our IL process, but I would like to build that throughout the culture of our district.
I
concur.
Related to that too, just to expand it, specifically using what we develop with the Innovation Leader tool, that it would significantly inform our entire process.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul.
Right. 8.03, which is instructional technology update.
I always get excited to talk about this, and I think I can't think of a better environment to be in than Falcon Virtual Academy tonight to talk about technology. I want to talk to you about what I'm going to refer to basically as two worlds related to technology in our district. We have the education or device side, which is the education, and then all of our support business operations departments, the devices. And then everything that comes out from that cord and everything that's making everything run, which is background or infrastructure. So I'll talk first of all about the education or device side. We have deployed all of the MacBooks for our staff. And one zone has trained. Our second zone, the secondary staff will train tomorrow, the power zone. And we're differentiating that training. Of course, you always learn a lot. After the Apple educators interacted with the Falcon zone, they talked to us about what went well. The teachers told us what went well, what they would have liked differently. And then the Apple educators also gave us feedback on what they learned. And so that'll inform and help our work tomorrow with the Power Zone secondary staff. And then in a couple weeks, Mr. Felice, it's your elementary. Is that correct? So within the next 3 weeks, the Power Zone will be trained. And we're excited about their training because they're going to do significant work in iBooks. Because of the pilot, they're getting more of that training because they've been ahead of some of the other places related to having these devices and the iPads and the planning for over a year. So we're really excited to see what they start to create in iBooks related to the content that they'll create and how they'll start to interact with the students on the iPads in their pilot, and the significant amount of learning that we're going to be able to do at a rapid pace. Also, I will tell you that, and this is really exciting, I get emails and phone calls several a week, 4 or 5 a week, from the other zone saying, hey, when are those iPads you promised us coming? And of course, that's a great thing. You'd rather have that chomping at the bit, so to speak, than saying, no, we don't want the new technology. So there's a lot of momentum and energy building for the one-to-one initiative and getting that appropriate, needed technology in both teacher and student hands. When you innovate and you innovate rapidly, sometimes you can have what we refer to as unintended consequences. And unintended consequences, the word consequence can often seem negative, but actually in this case it's really not. But what we really learned was that when you pull, the Board of Education approved us increasing our bandwidth, and we've referred to that as becoming a highway. And so we got a super improved highway, and it's well paved and ready to go. And then we pulled 800 wired, plugged in to the network devices off of that network, and we put 800 wireless devices into that environment. And what we learned was, oops, we need some off-ramps and on-ramps to get them on that highway. So we have invested significantly in wireless access points. I learned that they have arrived, and so we're working with facilities to determine how quickly we can make that happen. And in order to make sure that our investment this year in these devices is worth the money, we will be looking at the possibility of contracting any work out that would accelerate that pace. For example, let's say that it's a 4 or 5 month lead time to get over close to 400 wireless devices in, working with contractors and facilities both to make our invest a few more dollars and ensure that those devices are in rapidly so that our teachers can get our students out on that highway faster. So, but again, a very exciting lesson that we've learned, and certainly something that will inform our work related to infrastructure as we move forward and continue to put literally thousands of wireless devices into our environment. So a great lesson to learn. On the back end, or the background and infrastructure, CCS and district staff are working together and have identified over 20, whether it's systems or other areas that we need to pay attention to and look at how we're going to address that. Are we going to combine things, or are we going to renew those or replace those? Some of it is related to software that's used in food service, transportation, special education, facilities, etc. So the non-education side, but certainly just as important in terms of making sure their technology is running. Another big area is we've contracted to define some data warehouse requirements, because that's one of the things. Most all of those programs I just described require accessing infinite campus information. Infinite campus is very sensitive to FERPA, the Federal Educational Rights to Privacy Act, and how they protect their data and who can connect directly to their server, and so their answer is no one. And so a data warehouse allows us to take everything that we would need related to student staff data, put it into the warehouse, and then those 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 different systems can come into that warehouse and real time, seamlessly, they don't even know that they're not talking directly to Infinite Campus, and get everything they need to make sure that transportation, food service, etc. are running real time and fast. And so that's another big requirement. And then, of course, probably the biggest unseen work that we're doing is defining our long-term requirement for bandwidth for the internet as it relates to ensuring that it is E-ratable, if there's such a word, that we can apply for and make sure that it qualifies for E-rate. We have been very sensitive to the appropriate cautions that we need to take in our interactions with defining our requirement, and so that work is just beginning. And then finally, on the educational technology side, we are now reconvening our Educational Technology Committee to now, in a little slower pace, define what it looks like and all the, so we have less unintended consequences as we move forward related to what's it look like to go to one-to-one on the teacher side, the student side. What does that look like in terms of the pace? How do we pay for it, et cetera? And related to that, I do need to give kudos to Diane Kingsland. Diane, I think you're still here, aren't you? Stand up and give a wave. In her first few weeks on the job, Diane was able to engage with a group that had actually just formed for about 2 weeks called the Newman Group. And I believe you're going to hear a significant amount from these folks. We met with them a couple of weeks ago, and they have a really exciting vision, not only for Falcon School District, but for El Paso County. And their goal is to go 1 to 4 iPads in grades 1 through 5 by the end of a 5-year period. And why we're involved is they heard about us and what was going on with our iPad pilots and bringing the MacBooks to teachers. And so they came on board and asked us to find a classroom for them. And so it's Odyssey Elementary, right, Mr. Felice? Odyssey Elementary first grade is going, by the end of this month, have a 1-to-4 ratio and a smart board in the room to work with them. So we've been added. They wanted to pilot 3, and then they heard about what we were doing and said, we've got to involve Falcon. So kudos to everybody, Board of Education, for your support of these initiatives. Power Zone, Mr. Felice, your team, and then just, Blake Schwank and his team at CCS. A lot of teamwork to accelerate our pace. And what's been great is we said, we really value the notion and the research we've done on one-to-one. And they said, absolutely, we're not going to come in and shackle you. We want to unshackle you. We want to set you free. And so what our 1-to-4 will do is seed your 1-to-1. And so there's going to be, it'll work hand in glove. And so obviously, anything we can get purchased that's not from our general fund is something that we'll take. So kudos to the Newman Group. So if you know folks out there, these are just a bunch of gentlemen and ladies that have been involved, a lot of former prior military, prior Air Force Academy service, instructors, et cetera, that just have a real value and a heart for our region. And they understand the notion that we keep preaching, and that is technology for our children is no longer a nice to have. It is a must have. And actually what happened was this gentleman's a physicist, and it was the holiday season last year, and his grandson grabbed his iPad, downloaded Angry Birds, and started playing it in front of him. And he looked at himself and he said, you know what? He said, my grandson doesn't even know it, but he's learning physics and he's 3.5 years old. And so he said, I've got to get one of these in the hands of every kid in El Paso County. So I say hats off to all of them. So that's where we are. Any questions related to IT at this time?
I actually just have a comment, and the reason we're doing the pilot is as we're going along, we're learning what other things we need, because I think anyone who's ever been through any kind of upgrade in your home or done any kind of building knows you don't realize some of the problems you run into until you're in the middle of it. And so the purpose of this is strategic in that we're seeing the hiccups now. We can see them in a small scale and fix them, and that lets us then predict what those hiccups are going to be later, so that we truly use your money wisely. Because had we said, okay, let's find the money in some way, buy everybody an iPad this year and put them in all the classrooms, it would have been a colossal failure, because we wouldn't have had the wireless access points, we wouldn't have had the right teacher training. We're finding out where those gaps are in terms of the teacher training, in terms of what support they need in the classroom, in terms of what our infrastructure needs, so that we can make sure we plan this correctly, so that when we get those devices in everyone's hands, everyone can use them most effectively. And the only way to do that is to do something like a pilot and then say, okay, now we see how much this is really going to cost us, or how much we really need to change to make sure we do it right. And so by doing the pilot, it's giving us that opportunity, and it's letting us truly look at that dollar amount and understand exactly what it's going to take to do it the way we need to do it. So this is the smart way, both in terms of what we can learn from it educationally, as well as how we can plan for it and use your money most wisely.
And the exciting thing too is just the teamwork that's gone on. Is every time we identify a problem, you have about a 30-second of grabbing your hair, and Brett's even heard me utter words like why did I do this, but you know what? Then you get through that, you take a deep breath, and you say, okay, how do we solve this problem? And I know you guys get tired of me talking about going to the moon stories, but that's just so pertinent to me in my life personally. But that's what they did. My dad talked about all the time, the 18-hour days spent in missile silos trying to figure out, this alloy's cracking, and what are we going to do? And they didn't surrender. They didn't give up. And as Ms. McClellan said tonight, they did it not because it was easy, but because it was hard. And we're clear that we've embarked on a very hard endeavor. We have completely flipped the platform that our teachers use, the operating system. And so what we're saying to them is, we hear you. We hear that that's a frustration point or a stopping point for you. So what resources and training can we get? And that's just, that's our message. We're staying on message, and we're just solving the problem each time we go. And as Marie said, that's going to, when it's scalable. Those sort of discoveries are scalable. And so, nothing will ever be perfect, but I believe when we go full one-to-one, that we will have worked out a significant number of hiccups so that, and be so adept at problem solving on our feet that, and quite frankly, we're modeling what we're preaching to our kids, taking risks, problem solving. My daughter tells me, I hate when you say problem solve it, Dad. But she's off at college now, and she had some problems setting up her printer, a simple little thing. She said, Dad, I problem solved it. And so that's when we know we're hitting the home run with our kids. So.
And I'll just say that I have kids in 2 different zones, and one of them is at Skyview, and she brought home her iPad for the first time today. So she was really excited, and when I left to come here, she was working on some math problems on it. So that's pretty impressive, since she's off tomorrow and has 3 days off, and she's at home now doing math on an iPad. So I'm happy for her. So that's just my 2 cents on it. All right, 8.04 is expulsion and suspension information, and that's just for the board. So next is 9.0, which is discussion items. The Vista Ridge Power Zone update. Mr. Felice, how are you tonight?
Great,
Good.
great. Pleasure to be up here. We're like a lot closer.
I know.
And we can hear you really well.
That's excellent.
We need that mic. For
This is the mic we need at the boardroom. This is excellent. The first thing I want to do is say thank you to the board. We passed an innovation plan a year ago, and I have spent 5 days in each one of the schools talking to every single employee in the buildings, and they are just raving about the calendar itself and the fact that they had the opportunity to test those kids ahead of time, and it's just an excellent time for me to say thank you. It would be impossible for me to come up here and not tell you that thank you to Don as our team continues to grow and grow and grow. We've really are becoming a family at the highest level with the ILs and central office and so on, and I appreciate that a lot. That's been huge. As far as where we're headed in Power Zone, I think everybody is aware that the big ticket item, the thing that we're looking at this year, is teacher and principal evaluation. It made great sense to us that we really needed to define purpose before we started talking about in earnest evaluation itself. And so our innovation assemblies have met twice actually already. We've put a survey out to our community, as a matter of fact, already as well. We had 352 responses, 56 open-ended responses from the community, which were fantastic, and it's given us a really strong beginning point. And if Paul's still here, what's really neat about having a purpose is having accountability. And that's what's neat to be able to talk to our parents. And what's fun to be able to say is that, I don't have to remember what I said, because all I have to do is stand here and tell you the truth. I don't need to, kind of try to, what the heck did I say last time? No, it's just the truth. And so what we've gone about is basically we're going through the entire innovation process with one small deviation. And I think the board will appreciate this small deviation that we are doing with defining purpose, and that is that as we work through this with our innovation assemblies, our school accountability committees, and our zone leadership, we typically vote on a Tuesday and a Thursday evening for the school accountability committees, and that Wednesday in between our teachers get to vote. That's with an innovation plan. This is not an innovation plan. And so because it's not an innovation plan, we've asked all our staff to vote, classified everybody. So when we come back here and report to you, this is what Power Zone has determined as the purpose of public education. And I'd like to talk about that for 1 second. We're going to really have it's going to be a real wide, broad view. It's not just going to be our teachers. It's going to be every employee that works in the buildings. It's going to be all of our community as well. Critical, though, that I bring this up because the interesting question came in our first assembly meeting was, well, what is the purpose of public education? And so, you know, no one wanted to say a word. Finally, somebody said, well, I'll say it, it's test scores. And the fact of the matter is that if you go around and you look at public education websites, what you don't find is purpose. And there's a reason that you don't find purpose, because it's been defined for us. Purpose has been defined for us. And it is, in fact, test scores. And so that's where we began. And so we went through a process and came up with ultimately about 5 or 6 different items that are currently a draft. We're going to send that draft now back out to our community, and we're going to ask them for input. Included in the draft are things that I think that our board is going to like hearing. Strong foundational academic skills, offering a wide variety of learning opportunities, personal responsibility, a deepened understanding and respect for the cultures around them. And you know, an example of some of the feedback that I hope that we get back would be, you know, some of that around the democracy and the history of our nation and exactly how it's running, because we're walking the walk and talking the talk as far as this is exactly how we do business on a daily basis. Had a wonderful meeting with Kim today, and she and I and Mike talked about the process that she's using to, I want to say this right, to bless the charter schools. You're good?
Become a model authorizer.
Become a model authorizer. That's so much better than bless the charter schools. At any rate, it's a great tool. And why not take a look at that? Because ultimately, I believe, you know, talking to Paul in the back there, that the purpose is going to end up being the evaluation, or at least a great deal of the evaluation for both myself as an innovation leader and my team, you know, Mike Pickering and so on. And I'd be remiss if I didn't just say that we've got Diane Kingsland sitting back there, and you know, she didn't just bring in iPads for Odyssey. She brought in iPads, you know, at the first grade level for the district next year. She brought in $250,000 worth of equipment. She previously to that had brought in over $250,000, and so her meager salary, in contrast to that, is well, let's just say she's earning her money, her pay. And so I'm really thrilled with the work she's done, and I appreciate it very much. It makes me look good, and so thank you. I was teasing about that. People can laugh. The next step in the process is heading towards evaluation, and certainly we want, and I want to make sure that we give an update to the board as we go through this, so that as we go along, that we have an opportunity for you to ask questions, and that at the end of the the year, that we're not, what are all these questions? What are we going to do with this, and this? And so the update that I would give you as of right now is we're going to begin with purpose. While we were working on calendar a year ago, Mike and I were researching different evaluation models. We've told all our staff that the evaluation model that we're going to at least start with, because we needed a starting point, was Robert Marzano's evaluation tool. And so as board members, if you're interested, in, it's all online, you can Google it. It's incredibly long. That's not necessarily the part I absolutely love about it. But what I really do love about it is this. Beyond the fact that I can, evaluate a teacher on how they walk, chew gum, comb their hair, and the rest of that, they, in addition, we can really actually have a collaborative conversation. And we can narrow down the evaluation to actually tailor their specific needs. And so, as an overview, because what's going to come up, and ultimately what the board, I believe, is going to want to know, and I don't want to speak for you, I'd like to get some feedback, is what are your measurables? And I know that's always going to be an issue, and that's what's going to be in this purpose. And that's where I believe the zone leadership is held accountable. And then don't give us a watered down evaluation system, and make sure your community is really excited about it and they're really behind it. I'm very happy to tell you, as I've gone around to the schools, I've had enormous feedback that, one, they're excited about looking at the Marzano model. They're excited about moving in this direction, but the best part is I was at a school accountability meeting the other night at Vista Ridge High School where we had over 20 parents. I think we had 24, don't quote me on that, but approximately. And 100% of those parents are in agreement that we need to build and or adopt our own evaluation system. That the evaluation system that the state of Colorado is driving is not okay. And so I wanted to share that information with you as well. I think it's important that you are up to date on that. And with that, I'll answer any questions. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Mike.
I like what you said. It's important that the community is involved. Those are the folks that drives us. That's why we exist.
Yeah.
So I commend you on that.
Thank you.
Keep them involved. Keep them informed. May not always make them happy, but keep them informed.
You got it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. We got good mics here.
I'm really glad that part of my being late, I go to school on Thursdays. I'm glad that you're being so proactive on this and trying to do this. I know a couple of board members are soon to make some visits in a couple of the state evaluations.
Chris, you're going to have to talk into the mic or it won't record you.
I guess that's not going to work. I'm glad that you're being so proactive on this particular issue, because I know there's a lot of well, just misunderstanding, confusion, and a lot of information that just hasn't really hit, and as they're going through some of these processes, it's going to take a little bit of time to really see out what's in there. I would encourage you as you go through this. One of my major concerns is that through SB 191 and through any type of evaluation system that we have, is that teachers have a meaningful and valuable voice inside this process. And I don't think we're ever going to get to the point where we'll have a perfect product, but I know we will not get there without teachers. They have to have the strongest, most effective and efficient voice inside this process for those evaluations to have any substance to them. The other thing that I would encourage you to do as you're going through this process, I think there's probably a general consensus around the state that TSAPs and all the other state standard testing is somewhat meaningless. Its greatest value is normally years past, and then once you get past 2 or 3 years, the data becomes almost meaningless. So I would encourage you as you're going through this evaluation process, one is to make sure that your group has a strong contingency of teachers, and those who are in the educational process. The second thing is that as you're going through this, perhaps expand your scope a little bit into how we can give teachers meaningful test evaluations. Because the TSAF, which is a general understanding of where education is generally, is almost meaningless when it comes down to the individual child, especially as it's over a quarter or semester. Hopefully we can find a way to test teachers not on this kind of global perspective of growth, but actual growth that's happening when that child starts this course, and at the end of this course, this is what they've learned. And in my opinion, and I think there's a lot of data to substantiate this, and especially coming out of Norway, which we've both read a lot of that research, that that evaluation process needs to be instantaneous in some respects. And with the new high-speed, IT stuff that Don has been implementing and the board has approved, I think that can be part of this. So I know I'm going a little long-winded here, but basically my point is let's make sure that we have a strong presence of teachers, an overwhelming presence of teachers. And the second thing is that we take the TSAP, dismantle it, and find a new evaluatory system. And I think the teachers, because they're going to be in such high quantity inside this whole SB 191 process, that they may have some really good ideas on how to go about that. So hopefully you can.
They're talking about it already. I have, and my response to this point has been, let's take one thing on at a time and really do it right. As much as I would, and I told the teachers that, hey, I'm an advocate of dismantling TCAP. We're wasting billions of dollars across the country in these testing, standardized tests. But we need to do it deliberately, and we can do only so much right. And it's critical to us that we really get to you an excellent model, one that you can be proud of and that you can endorse and feel good about.
Mr. Wright, too, one of the things that Mr. Felice and I have talked a lot about is I'm kind of just looking at some notes from one of our meetings, but we really have talked about, and Tony Wagner talked about this, Christensen and Horn have talked about it in Disrupting Class, et cetera, is using the appropriate metric or artifacts to where we really can, the key word being demonstrate. I think that's what you're talking about, is that we can, it's not just paper pencil, but we have artifacts that we can show and demonstrate that the work of our teachers is so quality that this is what the students are producing. And I think that will be a huge piece of what, and I know you and I have talked about it, but I think that's important to note tonight, that those are going to be key.
What's interesting too on that same note, Don, is that there are so many different ways to evaluate a child's growth, and typically we've got and I know we've gone a little bit around this in the past, but we have an educational model that was based off the 19th century. Disrupting Class talks specifically about the disaster that is now, not because it wasn't necessary at its time, but that it hasn't been able to adapt and change with the flow of change and information now. So one of my hopes too is that in this evaluatory process, that we're getting outside of just the traditional logic train. Children learn in about 9 different ways. 7 some things say, 9 others. I've seen one model that's up to 14. But my point is on that is that hopefully we can find, how are they growing mentally? How are they growing physically? How are they growing spiritually? How are they growing emotionally? There are so many different aspects to the development of a child, and I hope that as we're developing this mental, which mostly we focus on because it's more quantitative, I hope that we're focusing on a qualitative evaluation too. And I think the people who are going to know that obviously are the parents, but more importantly are the teachers who spend 8 to 10 days, 8 to 10 hours a day with these children. So I hope we can incorporate some of that as well.
Teachers save lives, period. That's their job is to build relationships and love kids. And if they can do those 2 things, they can teach them. And they can't teach them until they do those 2 things.
And let me clarify on that too. I'm certainly not in any shape or form advocating that developmental evaluation or that qualitative evaluation of children is in any way taking away the responsibility of parents to do that for children. But just as a second observer and as a helpful community member in this big group of children and our future, that we're just taking appropriate steps.
And I anticipate a large number of your community, and I know that's very important to many board members. At the end of the day, a year ago we had 209 parents vote. My goal is to get somewhere between 400 and 500 to vote on this innovation plan. And I fully intend to make sure that, and our team does, to make sure that happens. And I believe it will happen because it's the most polarizing topic in education today. It's going to be a big deal in the November elections. And so we're going to do it right. you know, and right now we may look a little bit outlier-ish, but in 2 years I promise you that we're going to be known as the pioneers, and people are going to be coming here trying to figure out how do we do that. And so I'm real proud of the work that we've done so far, and really the people behind the scenes that are going to talk next are the real ones who are getting the work done. Just talk to people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's a couple more things we wanted to talk about quickly. One is technology update because of the instructional technology that we put into the zone. We talked about the pilot a little bit.
Mike,
And,
Mike, will you introduce yourself?
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm Mike Pickering. I work in curriculum instruction and assessment for the Power Zone. Wanted to just mention a little bit about classroom engagement for a second. You can walk into these classrooms, any classroom at any time, and you can see a variety of different learning opportunities being given to these students, and you are hard-pressed to find students who aren't engaged. And we're going to be tracking some discipline data as well and comparing that this year to last year and some other types of data to really see the effect that this is having on our students. And I think that we're going to see some really interesting, surprising things that maybe we didn't even think about. Because we mostly focus on the academic, instructional side of it. Sometimes you don't think about, I think it was Don that said these unintended consequences. I think we're going to find some positive unintended consequences of this as well. The other thing with the pilot too is we talk about collaboration and 21st century skills. We're talking about how to evaluate students a little bit here before. The amount of information that you can get onto these devices and then have on these devices permanently and then track that student growth from the beginning of the year to the end of the year is a built-in portfolio assessment of their work right there digitally. And that's something that's been exciting to see, and exciting to see how that's developing even throughout the first, really few weeks or a month and a half or so of school. So that's been really exciting as well. We fully intend to invite Mindy, Amy, some of our communications people into these classrooms to see what they're doing so that we can kind of start messaging some of this. We want to ensure that our infrastructure is where it needs to be in order before we do that. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves. There's still, as Don talked about, some infrastructure things that we're working on with access points and other types of things. As soon as those are in place and flowing a little bit better, we would love for you all, obviously, to come into and to look at what's going on in those classrooms. Really, the last thing that I wanted to mention about instructional technology before I hand it over to Mrs. Kinglin and Mr. Malapard is the idea of the teachers, these pilot teachers. They have all of the work and all of the accountability that any other teacher has in the zone, plus this whole new environment to learn and to work through, and they have been so gracious about it. We knew there was going to be issues that come up. There has been issues that has come up. When we could get the devices home, getting on the network, dropping off the network, these types of things have happened, and it does interfere with the instruction in the classroom. But they have been so positive about it, so their kids have been positive about it, and their parents have been positive about it as well. We had parent meetings to introduce this entire thing, and it was a good reception. There were good questions asked at the parent meetings, but overwhelmingly, it's been a positive response so far. For what potentially introducing these types of devices, this type of disruptive innovation into the system, it could have been much. We could have had a lot more issues. Let's just put it that way. And it was through the efforts of our teachers, and specifically John Lichtenberg as well, his tremendous amount of support in this program as well, that's really that's gotten us off the ground. So with that, I am going to introduce Mrs. Kinglin real quick, just to tell you a little bit about what she's been working on in some of her 21st century STEM capacity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I've been in this job a whole month now, and you have an update in your paperwork tonight about the first month. It was a great opportunity to start out the first month with Rob Friedel from the Newman Education Foundation contacting me. Rob and I had done some STEM work together a couple years ago, and I get to spend a lot of time with the military. And so it was nice to bring that offer to the district. They have a lofty goal of raising over $15 million to be able to put in the hands for every child in El Paso County, and that also includes apps, the wiring, smart boards, training, etc. So that was pretty nice. I was also able to spend some time, part of my job is to visit each school and visit with the teachers and the teams and see how I can help. Not everybody wants to talk about STEM. Not everybody understands what STEM is. In a lot of ways, it's a word that nobody wants to hear anymore because it's been overused. But if you want any of the money that's out there or a lot of the resources from the military, from defense, you've got to use that acronym. I like to use the acronym STEM, but thinking of it as strategies that engage the mind. That way you don't leave anybody out. Everybody's included. So do you have any questions about my update? Yes, sir.
Maybe I'm technically challenged here. How soon until, and probably maybe both of you, until we actually have soft copies for textbooks onto these devices? And is it possible do these devices have that type of storage capacity to do that, or is that Wi-Fi that's going to run that type of technology?
We have some of the pilot teachers and as well as some of the other teachers that are actually in process of writing their own textbooks right now. I've had several pull me aside and say, geez, I thought this was going to be just this enormous task, and oh my gosh, this is so easy. And then the answer is yes, the iPads do have the ability to hold those books, and you can't create them on the iPad, but they are, that's where you can read them.
How soon can we start, since we're almost to that point then, how soon can we start going through the textbooks and correlating what's in those textbooks with what the community in general wants to see in there? There's a lot of social programs that are part of these textbooks, especially through RAND, that are not consistent with what the community would like their children to be reading. How soon can we transition that into those textbooks into representing the ideas of this community?
You know what, I'd like to explain it this way, that in 2002 when NCLB was passed, really what happened was the idea of curriculum, it really was augmented and changed because we went to standards-based, and I'll just say it, our federal government got in a big firestorm over the history issue and what would and wouldn't be in the history standards. And so we don't have national standards today because of that. And so what we have is individual state standards. And so what we have is standards and resources. And so textbooks are resources. And the quicker that we can get away from using the textbook as a resource, the better we are, because the textbook gets beat up, it's immediately out of date the moment you buy it, just like when you drive the car off the lot. How fast is really going to be determined. I mean, that's really the fair answer and the honest answer I can give you, because I know our pilot teachers are gung-ho and rolling, and that we have a handful of others that are doing this as well. I myself have used an iBook to document my year. And so I have a real good, ultimately in a decade, I'm going to have this enormous iBook that is, my last 10 years in education. And so I think it'll happen fairly quick. It's just such an incredibly easy tool to use.
The interesting thing too, I mean, as board members, we only have a couple of injunctions that specifically came through state statute, and one of them is control over curriculum. And when this board is able to, I think once the inroads in the zones are such that you guys have the technology, the skills, the financing through backpack funding to actually really control at the local level. It will be at that point where this board can create its proper role, which is policy generation and curriculum alignment, and fiscal oversight.
And I think that's where this purpose is just so critical. And and this isn't to offend any educators in the room, any public educators, but that's where charters have the advantage. They do get to define for themselves as a community, this is what our purpose is. And that's what's going on right now in Power Zone, and I think that that's ultimately what we get held accountable to.
Awesome. The next two questions I have, which are more pragmatic. The portfolio for each student, how soon will we be able to have that actually on, whether we're using Black Book or, the other three different things that we have going on?
There's a couple different programs that we're looking at. Pathbright is one that's actually used, that Tony Wagner mentioned that. And Edmodo is one that we talked about.
I've seen that one.
Which Edmodo has started to become quite an amazing tool. Well, I haven't owned any stock in it, but I'm just saying, from what we've seen, it's really having some surprising ability to be able to track student growth. So, I mean, and to answer your question most directly, when will we be able to actually do that?
Yeah.
I would say by the end of this year in the pilot classrooms, we're going to be able to see, and so the pilot kind of another unintended consequence, how these portfolios look and how to grade them is going to be the issue.
I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. So what you're saying is that teachers will be able to go into that system, they'll be able to create their own lesson plans on a daily basis, and those can easily be summarized. Parents can go into that same porthole and view what's happening in that particular classroom on that day. Students can go into that same porthole. Obviously, these are all password protected and certain levels of, authority there. And then students can go into that same thing, track their lessons that are on in those things, and then over a year basis, each one of those students and parents can go in there and track their growth year over year. Is that what I'm hearing?
I would say yes, and I would say it's not necessarily going to be one program that manages everything you just said.
So we may have to do some bridges then.
But there might be some bridging between like Curriculupedia, something we're working on now, sounding exactly like what you're talking about.
Exactly.
As far as the curriculum side goes, and as far as the actual student work, parents actually being able to see the progress of their own child's work throughout the year, I'm thinking more likely about
Are teachers fine? I mean, I know you're on the crust with this, and now it's just beginning to unfold, and I'm sure there's a million different questions that are going to come up that you haven't even conceived of yet. But are teachers feeling like they're beginning to align with this and finding that their workload is decreasing because of this? I see a nod in the back there.
I'd probably say that, isn't it fair to say your workload is increasing?
Well, yeah, but the first thing I looked up the iPads was that when I got to sit there and do my testing and put my scores in right there, and it was done, and I didn't have to worry about it again. Now I just have to be able to see my data.
And so I think our teachers are working harder. I think that you have teams and zones working harder. The difference is that they can't wait to get to school and work harder.
Yeah.
They love it.
I saw that. Is it not easier, or is it just, are we in a transition point and that's what makes the difficulty of it, which is understandable? We can integrate all the smart boards and all these other things in there. Okay.
A lot going on at once, and that's, as we went into the year, we were very clear about, we took on a ton a year ago, and we didn't finish it, and so we didn't want to add more to the table. We wanted to do what we were going to do and do it right. The only thing that's been added to the table has been handed to us, and we need to do that, and I'll talk about that at a later date.
Well, hopefully soon we'll have somebody who's on the operational side creating efficiencies there and driving more money to you, driving more resources to you. So hopefully that will help expand.
That absolutely will help.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I'm Eric Malapard, data analyst for the Power Zone, and I guess they just kind of wanted me to talk about a couple of the projects that we're working on. One thing, the testing and just uploading that data, we built a form on the iPad that all the teachers got to use that allows them to enter their DIBELS and Fonts Pinnell data onto that. They send it all to me, I compile it, and then Sherry Lynn's going to upload that for us to Alpine. So it eliminates the need for them to type in hundreds and hundreds of pieces of information over and over and over. My background was operations research for the military, and there was a lot of optimization, kind of stuff like that. So when I came into education, I saw a lot of redundancy and a lot of things that people were doing over and over and over, and I thought we can save a lot of time on this. So that's kind of what I've been doing. So that was one of the big projects. We have a walkthrough form that our administrators are using. We started that last year. We have data from last year. They're doing it again this year. We have a color-coded spreadsheet that they had built in the past, but once again, every single teacher had to type in every single piece of information. So they did this testing, and then they had to enter that information on Alpine. They had to enter it in at least one or more spreadsheets. So what I'm doing is they send me the data, we upload it with Sherilyn's help, and then I create all those spreadsheets for them. They don't have to go through that process of creating all these different spreadsheets that they used to have. Another project that I kind of wanted to do is an RTI predictor. So rather than having people just go through piles and piles of information by hand, build an algorithm that will allow us to take any information that an administrator would want or an RTI coordinator. So we could take grades, testing information, attendance, referrals, all of that, and then run it through an algorithm that will, there's two parts of this. One, it will allow them to then see a score for students, on a 0 to 100 scale or whatever we decide that we want to do on that. So you'll see your most at-risk students, but the other part of that is that we'll also be able to look at it longitudinally. So you'll be able to look at it from quarter to quarter and see if a student has dropped a lot. So maybe they weren't in your top 10% of students, but you will be able to see if they've gone from a score of 10, which is low, to a score of 50, which is not high, but a 40-point increase might be a big deal. So you could see students that are going in the wrong direction, even though they might not have shown up on the RTI process yet. TCAP item analysis, that's pretty simple. Basically just giving every teacher by standard how their students performed. So they'll get a graph that says standard 1, you had 15 of your 30 students that were proficient. Standard 2, this number of students. And then it'll also be by student, but just a graph that'll allow a teacher to quickly see where their class as a whole has weaknesses or strengths. I think that's mostly it. There's a 5th grade spreadsheet that I want to build. That is the 5th grade to 6th grade transition. Right now, once again, teachers fill out this big form for every single student. So we're talking to hundreds of students that are doing this. And we have all that information in a different place. So we can just compile that information on our own and then allow the teachers to make their recommendations as well. So that's mostly what I have for projects right now. Anybody have any questions on any of those?
Yeah.
That's fast, I'm sorry.
Do you want to go?
No.
I've been kind of dominating this. How soon, and I guess I'm looking at the back of the room for IT, how soon can we get learning plans, individual learning plans? Because that affects so much on transportation, it affects so much for different types of funding and stuff like that. How soon can your research that you're doing in this database and spreadsheets that you're doing begin to interact with these types of systems like Mike is working on? Because there's great value in that, especially when it comes to how many parents have come up and said, hey, I don't get enough, my student should have this or my student should have that, and we can't correlate that data. Are we on that, or is that a goal out there?
I believe they use Alpine for some of the ILP stuff, and that data will be uploaded into Alpine for them.
So we're able to bridge some of that technology and bring that into one particular system.
I'm not sure. Where are they doing ILPs right now? I'm not sure. Is it all in Alpine right now?
And I think Don knows some about this as well, but there's been some talk about the systems talking to one another and some of the proprietary business, if that's not a word, but whatever, of IC and whatnot, and making these systems to work together better. And so that's what we need to kind of go for. And I know that we're working on that. I know that we're working on that at a central level as well.
And that's where a data warehouse will help us.
Yeah, I'd really like that.
How are we doing with creating a data warehouse?
Well, quite frankly, this Malapart became a verb, and it really did. This gentleman that stands before you is an absolute genius.
He's the foundation of that.
And he has really helped us in a tremendous amount of ways. But really, he's the one who has become the warehouse himself. He's the one who's put it all together. And as he just said, it would really be nice to have a warehouse.
Right now what I do is I go and pull all the information. So if I want rosters, student IDs, everything like that, teacher, classes for the high school, all that. I go into IC, pull all that information to Excel or Access. I go and pull all the information out of Alpine. I use the forms that the teachers are supplying me. I go into Ed Performance and pull our Scantron data because we have to wait for that to get uploaded. So I go and pull all this information, and then I just create a giant database of my own. I pretty much am, I think that's what you guys want to do, right?
Yeah.
Really, that's the whole process.
Where do our district IT guys fit in that? So something for the entire district? Where they?
They're more infrastructure and.
Hey, I want to hear from them.
Yeah.
I think transportation you should get ready too, because I want to find when that Z-Pass can actually start integrating into some of these systems so that parents can go immediately online and say, oh, here's how much I've put in the system. I just have 4 more rides left.
Okay, so on the data warehouse side, what we've done is met with a separate vendor and Don and some of the principals to figure out, or the business, on the business side, because the data warehouse ties into transportation, food service, and a lot of other things besides the education side. So we've met with a contractor who's met with Don, and that's a different side than the infrastructure. So we tie into it because right now there's a lot of input that our team does on the student side at the beginning of the year and the teacher side.
Are we making sure everybody's connected now, or is everybody out doing their own thing? I mean, are we making sure that we all connected as a district, on the district side of the house, because we all are District 49?
Yes, that's the purpose. One of the things that we discuss regularly in the innovation leader meetings is that coordination.
I want to make sure that that piece is locked.
Right. And so we decided that really the data warehouse is going to benefit all of us. Okay. And so I became the point person on that when I was the EXO.
Roger.
And I kept technology as a piece of the CEO just because I felt like it was too complex. I've got too much institutional knowledge up in my head to try to hand that off in an acting sort of undefined time period. And so that's what I'm doing, is coordinating through with CCS and meetings with Blake. Blake's also meeting individually with the ILs, but we all keep each other in the same loop, even if we're not in the same room.
And that's what I would ask. We're all out there in the innovative world, but District 49.
Right, and that's one of the things about the data warehouse guys is they'll actually end up sitting down and talking with each of the business units to make sure that in finance, they're heard, in transportation they're heard, and everything else.
One of the requirements that I talked to the subcontractor that's starting to go out and build what we're envisioning for a data warehouse was I talked to him about what I refer to as modularity. The ability to, there's pieces of technology or systems that we may introduce that we don't even know about yet. And so rather than, meeting our current need, we want expandability. How can we expand this? How can we, if we decide we're going to go to a different system, how can we drop that off? Or if we integrate food service, transportation into one system, how can we unplug their 3 systems and plug that one in seamlessly? The key for us is Blake would know that's going on. I might know it's going on because I'm working with the subcontractor. The educators and the people using those systems, it should just be seamless. They should get on the next day and start doing the work that they do, and hopefully it's faster and more efficient. That's what they should notice, not anything else.
As we're creating this infrastructure and we're starting to really build, what we want in that particular thing, how long is this migration going to take? I mean, realistically, are we talking 5 years?
To a data warehouse and something tying it all together? We don't know at this point because they have to sit down and actually touch every system and see what exactly transportation needs, what exactly from Infinite Campus, or what the food service needs to tie into. And so every one has a little bit different interface. And so until the initial part is just to determine what's exactly out there. Yeah. And then there'll be, I imagine you talked to them about another proposal to actually tie it all together. But they have to find out what's out there first.
You know what, it's just amazing to me that so much of this, and there's one other thing that Loretta, I want to comment on that I know Loretta will appreciate. The power zone is just on the avant-garde on all of these issues. One of my challenges would be Sand Creek, Falcon. I mean, maybe because you didn't have the opportunity to have an FYI this week on everything, but where are you? the Falcon Virtual Academy and the iConnect zone is just tearing it up. Power Zone is tearing it up. Where are these other 2 zones?
So in fairness to them, they did get aced out of this. And we really are working, and unfortunately, due to a personal matter in my family yesterday, we had to cancel the IL meeting. But that was one of the items we wanted to talk about is there's really great work being done around innovation and integrating technology that's not being funded through different initiatives, that at the district level, for example. I do know, for example, already that the Falcon High School is using the little touch iPod Touch in a way that the Power Zone is integrating the iPad. Obviously, this is a far more powerful device. I know that Sean Dorsey's zone has, principals and Sean have personally, or they not personally, but they've invested zone money last year and this year in iPads. So we've got some informal piloting going on there as well. So they're there. They're making noise, and we're going to give them a chance to get in front of you over the next, what I really want us to get into is just a rhythm of each zone coming and taking their opportunity to talk about the great things, the risks they're taking, and the lessons they're learning. Tonight just happened to be in Falcon Virtual's home stadium, and the Power Zone got on the agenda, but I can vouch that Falcon and Sand Creek are out there, and we're going to give them a chance to roar and let you know what's going on as well.
And we sat down with Monty Lammers today, and he's chomping at the bit to get his teachers and his principals to go, attack the technology.
Well, I'm glad I can chide on him a little bit. The other thing, which is what I know Loretta will appreciate, with all of this technology and all of the advancements that we're making on the technological field and the educational field, trying to bring all that together, I hope that at the same time, and I know we have a lot on our plate, I know that you guys have tons of work to do. You got 10 years of work to do, and I've only got 13 months left, so you got to figure it out. And but one thing I would hope that you could focus on too, and this is really a challenge for all the ILs, is the vocational programs which build the kinesthetic skills and also the mental skills within these children by giving them activities to actually grow on. I hope that as we're moving forward with this technological advancements, that somebody is finding ways to get these children out activated into these different things. We talked about it a while back, and I hadn't heard anything, and I know we brought it up in one of our meetings, Tammy and I, when we were looking at agenda setting, but I would like to see that same type of technology moving forward in a way that shows vocational aspects. Majority of our children are not going to go to college, and of the 5 of the 10 who do go to college, only 2 of them are going to graduate. So we're missing a huge segment of this if we just focus on these particular things. And I know we can't diversify everything, we'll liquidate everything down, but I hope that there's some plan out there to integrate these types of skills, woodworking, automotive, construction, all of those types of skills. I know we have our food services and that kind of stuff where we, align with Pikes Peak and all that kind of stuff. But I hope that that's not taking a sidestep, as we're focused on this innovation stuff.
Chris, one of the things we've done is we've re-engaged the Career Builders Academy. We only have a few students in there this year, but as they've kind of recalibrated as an organization and reached out to us this summer, and so we've re-engaged them. And I see that going into next year, especially, kind of what we call getting the law of the farm in the right state. We need to recruit our kids and notify our kids this spring so that as we're building master schedules for next school year, they're really excited, the Career Builders Academy, to, see more of our students, and they see us as a real partner district. So we've reestablished that relationship. Because it was reestablished later in the summer, we didn't get as many kids over there as we would have liked, but that's out there. And then, continuing to look at, partnering with AVP in those programs. I know there has been some talk about can we create enough momentum in our district to bring some of those things like that in-house. So I think that's a conversation we need to have too, is when do we get enough kids in the program that economy of scale, it becomes more appropriate for us to look at running different vocational type hands-on programs in our district.
As part of that Career Academy do we have people going out, and I know I'm dominating this conversation, I'm so sorry, but do we have people going out and bridging these bridging these relationships with these businesses in order to give these children meaningful experiences, but also cut down on the expenses that we're going to be required to put out through these programs, because if we can partnership through them, you know, it's so much more valuable and meaningful for the kids. And it also, one of the challenges I think we've had as a small growing community, well, I guess the west side of the district's not so small growing, but on the east side, you know, is interacting those things and connecting the dots with that type of, you know, stuff.
We had an informal conversation with the Newman Foundation, which is not their purpose because they're really focused on that 1 to 4 iPad initiative. But one of the things that we talked about was that what we thought would close the other half of that is if they're going to fund and put those devices in our children's hands, is that as our students begin to gain those skill sets, that these gentlemen who run or are in senior executive positions in corporations throughout El Paso County, can we engage them in school business partnerships to get our kids out there, not only to watch and be, you know, kind of passive participants in how those devices are being used in a vocational or a business setting, but actually can we set up appropriate internships for our children to get out there and actually get credit for, you know, that becomes their elective classroom and some of those things and how we fashion that. We did have a preliminary conversation with them about that, and they seem to be, you know, obviously that wasn't the purpose for them being with us that day, but they were open to us having a side conversation and them introducing us to their contacts.
Well, I think also you have to think back, because of course we only heard from the one zone today. Falcon High School, in fact, their innovation plan in large part is the academy concept. And the academies they already had in place were graduating students when they left high school, certified as EMTs, CNAs, having some of the technology skills to walk out at the end of high school and actually be able to get decent paying jobs. And they're expanding that concept. So in fact, their whole innovation plan is taking and saying, what are our various career paths, some of which require additional college and some of which don't, and giving our children those skills. So we in fact have a high school in our district who's doing that. And so that's that, you know, where are you, Falcon? There's Falcon High right there doing some of what you're saying, and they're doing it with CTE dollars, which give us significant funding to pay for those teaching positions. So those teachers go through the training process and they get the certification, and then the state chips in extra bucks to pay for their salary, which brings in the money and the resources you're discussing. So, you know, each zone is taking a different aspect of that, and I think it's really important to recognize that Falcon High is already following that path.
EMT and culinary arts are fantastic, but I want to see more. Those two programs are fantastic, but they're primarily the only programs.
They had, I believe,
I'd like to
8
see
different ones in their innovation plan they were hoping
Well,
to
I'm talking ones where they can get out and do stuff. I appreciate the business programs that they have over at Falcon. I like that. I've had a lot of kids inside of that. I want them, I want hardcore skills. Skills like construction, skills like automotive, skills like woodworking, skills like metallurgy. Those types of skills. I want to see those types of things, because those are the things that are transferable immediately, you know, welding,
and
those types of skills.
And let's give them time to do that for us.
Yeah, and all I'm trying to do is set a vision for you, that's it. I know you can't do everything in a day, but if you can get it done by tomorrow, that'd be great.
And Mr. Vice President, I understand you came in late and you're trying to catch up on everything. We understand.
And I'm just going to bring this back to the Vista Ridge Power Zone group so that we don't get too far off track tonight. So sorry about that. Anything else? Or
Yeah, any more data questions? No? Okay.
thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, that was close. So 9.03 is the matrix management, student safety. Oh,
No,
are we good?
he was just asking a
Okay.
question.
Sorry.
Same thing, sorry.
Ask the Vice President, make sure he.
You okay to move on now, Chris? You okay? You're moving on?
I am okay.
Okay, good.
I have one more thing I want to put out.
Really, one more?
Unless we're wrapping it up, I know we're pretty close to the end.
Really, one more?
We skipped an agenda? That was that.
Busy?
Did you have something else?
Yeah, they changed
Okay, wait, we gotta get it.
He can put them out in. We were just trying to get past the vice president.
Dave,
Hold up for a minute.
take a deep breath.
Oh, okay, because I was thinking that you had moved all the way into the next program
Right.
meeting of that.
No.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Mr. Pickering, I apologize.
No, it's fine. So
in 45
it is
seconds.
Yeah, exactly. It's getting late, and there's a few things I wanted to hit on. This particular agenda item, I think it's under Power Zone because I am in the Power Zone right now, but in reality, it's actually something that's been going on with some research that's been going on in the district for the past 2 years. And in concert with everyone from Chris Trask to Mary Gwynn to Becky Carter to Don Beecher. And I will try to, this has the propensity, this topic, to get boring very quickly. And so I'm going to try to go through it as quickly as possible and respect your time and everyone's time here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's in here already.
It's in the packet.
And it's on our
Computer.
computer.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in your
gonna say.
individual
Yeah.
item packet of your board packet.
Yeah, I got it open. Looking at it.
Which I like better than this, actually. I like this one. It's not in there, it's in the individual item packet, which is the one I usually use. Yeah, which is better than
This
this.
is in the hard packet?
Yeah.
Might be in here. You're right.
It ties in with that. Each individual building is kind of doing their own thing out of their counseling department. My goal with the safety action team is to try to standardize something. I already mentioned the Colorado School Safety Resource Center as a resource. SROs, you know, they're in our schools. They do a lot of classes on their own. However, with budget cuts, they're not in our middle school anymore. Through the Colorado Springs Police, they used to do a lot of interactive training slash peer, or I'm sorry, not peer, but classes with our students.
Do I get paid overtime?
Yeah, you get paid.
0 times 2, right? Is still 0? We'll double it.
I like new math better. 9.04 is the meeting dates for the 2013 calendar year. So we just went with the same as it's just been, the community is used to having our meetings, our regular board meeting the second Thursday and our work sessions the fourth Wednesday of every month. So we just went off of those dates, and the not having work sessions in July and December, which we typically seem to need to, but it'd be nice if we didn't have to one month. On to our last item. Are you okay with that? Oh, sorry. 9.05 is pre-disaster mitigation plan. Mr. Beach.
This is a letter that we received, and in the transition from Becky to myself, this sat on some desks longer than it should have. And so you'll see that it was dated August 15th, and that they want us to let them know. I don't think we have to move this as an action item. I need your direction to say, you know, which option you would prefer. Dave would tell you that the REMS, what does that stand for, Dave?
Readiness Emergency Management.
Right.
Second.
All right, no other business unless anybody else has anything? Okay, 11.0 adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, a vote, please.
Mr. Allen.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. Aye.
Mr. Irons. Aye. Mrs. Boovier Wright.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
And I did note in the minutes at the time that Mr. Rice came in to the board meeting.
Thank you.
I should let you know that even though we did have a lengthy meeting, that actually being...
I don't want to delay the process. The purpose of me standing in front of you right now is twofold. The purpose of the research that went on over the last 2 years was, one reason, was to dive into professional development implementation practices in the district, and to also look specifically at formative assessment practices in the district. Because we had spent a lot of money in the district, centrally, to work on professional development, specifically in formative assessment. We saw a lot of things coming down the pipeline with formative assessment, so we started to really look at that heavily. And so that's really the first purpose, is to report on to you some of the findings that we found about how to increase the effectiveness of professional development and spend our professional development dollars more wisely. And the second one was specifically how to look at formative assessments in general, and how can we possibly teach these practices more effectively at the classroom level. So everything that I'm about to talk about directly affects and is resultant of the students in our classrooms, in our schools. So this is not, the research that was done is not something that says, okay, this is research-based, that is research-based. It's good to be research-based, but this information is research validated by the students that are in our particular classrooms. Good. So I want to make sure that was aware.
Can we just watch it?
Office hour.
I thought you were trying to get out of here.
Okay. There you go. And the second reason for me to be in front of you over these next about 10 minutes or so is because in February of this year, the purpose, we got another purpose. And the other purpose for this research was Becky Carter and I sat down and we were talking about this exact presentation, how it might look. And we started talking and said, what if this could be replicated in other areas? This type of kind of research and design process, is it just for things like formative assessment practices in the classroom, or could this possibly be replicated on a grander scale, possibly with innovations in other departments that aren't even necessarily academic departments, efficiencies? And so that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit in the next few minutes as well. So those two things. I'm going to talk a little bit about a traditional approach and an innovative approach to PD and professional development. The first approach is this traditional approach, which is basically kind of, given the current resources that we have, typically what as educators we've done, which is basically identified a program or practice that we want to teach. Then we send an administrator to that practice because we don't have the funds usually to send a lot of different people to that national conference that we want to send them to. Then that administrator comes back with a bundle of information from whatever that particular professional development was about. Then it's their task to go and give it to the teachers, and the teacher's task to dive through it and decide what, given the average realistic time constraints in their own classrooms, what are they really going to be able to give to their students? And that's really what we've tended to do. What I'm proposing and talking about here is a different approach. The example that I'm going to use in here is the research that was done over the last 2 years in formative assessment practices. Traditionally, again, we would be there's about 70 formative assessment practices that are shown to lead to increases in student growth at the classroom level. But that's 70. And so traditionally what we would do, again, is give them to teachers, and teachers could decide how and when and where to implement these practices. And you tend to get a spattering of implementation, and at very different levels. So the innovative approach that I want to talk about tonight deals with a couple of differences, kind of tweaks to that process. One is identifying local experts. You don't always have local experts because sometimes the practice or program is so new that no one knows about it, except for a few people. But if you do have local experts and you can identify those local experts across the district, I'm not talking zone-wide here either. There's someone at Falcon High School that can come in and support Vista Ridge High School teachers. We need to do it. And that's what we do. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about building this teacher leadership capacity in our teachers. I mean, that's something that is a new teacher quality standard in the Colorado state standards for teachers, is building leadership capacity amongst the teachers in our district. And so that would give that an opportunity to do that. The next thing is that we can look at these rate of adoption factors that I'm going to talk about in a minute here, and how to increase the rate of implementation no matter what the practice is. No matter if it's a new reading program, no matter if it's a new way to write IEPs for our special education students, no matter what the new program or practice is, that if we address these rate of adoption factors, we might see an increased success in the classrooms. So, pretty much that. I'm going to skip through this because that's kind of basically what I said. Basically, this slide is just saying that the advantages to this research and design process, also doing it within your district, is that you have some research validated results of the specific demographics and the specific students within your district, rather than trying to rely on this external validity in some other city, state, or country for that matter. So we have some more reliable results. So there are 3 questions that this research talks about and lends itself to. One, again, is what factors lead to increases in effective implementation of new learning practices, regardless of what that practice is. The second one was there's 70 formative assessment practices. Are there certain practices that can be grouped together in order to teach them more effectively and efficiently in the classroom? And the third question is, of those practices that can be grouped together, are there ones that our students in our classrooms have shown to be able, can we attach CSAP or Scantron student growth scores to those specific practices? So teachers, 283 teachers out of 700, let me go to that part. 283 teachers out of 745 licensed teachers took a survey, and they said, out of all of these 70 formative assessment practices, which ones do you use in your classroom the most, basically? Which ones do you feel you're skilled enough at that you use in your classroom the most? So that was basically along the lines of the question. We got a 38% response rate on that. There's a few studies out there that I mentioned there from the American Association of Polling, and I don't forget what the O stands for, research, but basically kind of the main polling research gurus. That might surprise you, because actually between a 20 to 25% response rate, if you get a varied sample, is actually a better sample than if you get a very high response rate from one particular demographic group. So that's kind of what we're looking for in response rates for our surveys, is qualitative data is more of a spattering of demographics more than just a high response rate. So in the qualitative study, there was 31 out of 35 teachers and 89% response rate. So the first part, the rate of adoption factors. I'm not going to read through all of this. I'm just going to give you an overview because I know you had it in your packet. But what we did was we ran these 5 characteristics through the filter of 31 teachers in a school. And we said, which of these factors do you believe would increase the comfort level of you actually using not just formative assessment practices, but any newly learned practice in your classroom? This is what they said. 73% of them said something about trialability, which was the ability to try these new practices in the classroom without fear of being immediately evaluated on it. So that much like the MacBooks, okay, there's some fear there because there's accountability measures are raising all the time, and now we've introduced this entirely new device into their hands, and they're thinking, wow, if I don't use this as proficiently as I could have used the Dells, I'm going to get counted down on it. If we can remove that fear on the front end, they tend to be more likely to try to implement. So that was triability. Complexity is exactly what it sounds like. How simple was the, how simple or complex is the actual, the new practice? The simpler, obviously, the more chances to implement. Compatibility was an interesting one, and it's very interesting when you talk about the MacBooks too, and the implementation of the 800 new MacBooks, really in the iPads too, for that matter. Because the compatibility one was, okay, so how well can I slide this practice into the practices that I'm already doing? Or are they completely opposite from each other? If they're completely opposite from each other, less rate of adoption. If they're more compatible, or if on the front end we can find ways to make them more compatible, there'd be an increased level of implementation. Observability is the, this idea of admin. It doesn't have to be admin, it could be peers, but someone who has knowledge of that particular practice, let's say it's formative assessment, someone who knows about formative assessment, actually being in the classrooms on a regular basis to give non-evaluatory suggestions for what they should do in the classroom to start off with. What was a factor of implementation? And the last one was relative advantage, which was basically, is this practice any better than the last? Is the MacBook any better than the Dell? Is there an advantage to the MacBook over the Dell, for example? So, quickly to go through this one, basically relative these are the 5 different rate of adoption factors I talked about. I just highlighted a couple of them. I'm not going to read through all of those by any means. I'm actually only going to pick 2 of them. If you look at, for example, under compatibility, future learning supports or improves upon current practices. That's what I talked about. All the responses that you see up there, there was a certain percentage of teachers that gave responses that fit into those particular categories. So that's why they went into those particular different categories. And that's kind of the power of qualitative research. And that's why I think that a lot of what we're doing with surveying, we talk about accountability, we talk about multiple measures, we always seem to come back to quantitative measures for some reason. And I think it's because of the ease and simplicity of a mathematical system that we can compute some type of result. But the qualitative data is really where you're digging in and getting some of the more feeling and some of the more passion and possibly some of the better information. So I'm not going to read, but basically you can see there were different responses that teachers gave, and that if we decided to look at these up front, then maybe we'd have more success in actually implementing some of these practices in the classroom. So let's get that. I'm actually going to skip over this slide for time, but I am going to say, so now we're on to research question number 2, which was, can you take these 70 formative assessment practices and can you actually make this something manageable and meaningful for teachers? And so we basically kind of put these practices, their responses through an algorithm in a statistical program and shot them out and showed that teachers tended to be high in certain levels, that these particular practices would come together and that you could actually teach practices together to come out with a certain end goal. So basically, instead of just saying, here's 70 practices, go formatively assess your students, well, how about looking at component number 2 specifically on here and saying, I want to teach my students to set goals and self-assess, and I'm going to use these 3 specific practices that were shown to work in concert together very well, and I'm going to teach those specific practices. Something much more manageable and much more targeted. And so that was one component example. There were 9 components total. Won't read through them all, but basically it's the same idea. So that was the second question. Can some of these be taught in concert together to make them be able to be taught more efficiently? The answer is yes. I mean, this would support anyways that you can do that. So the last thing is the third question, which you can't read that obviously, but you didn't read it in there. So basically that question was, so we took 3rd through 5th graders, 2008, 2009, and 2010 CSAT data, 2008, 2009, and 2010 Scantron gain scores, and we looked at those, and we saw, were there particular teachers that were high in particular formative assessment practices? Did those correlate to increased levels of achievement in the classroom? They did, in a number of areas. And that's what I have to show you the last slide and then a closing statement. But basically, this is kind of what you start with. This is what you started with. 70 practices.
Thank you. Could have made it a little bigger.
I tried to get on 2 pages.
Right.
And this is what you ended up with. And that's the crux of it, really, is that the last part, I mean, you got this, you can give that, or you can give this. And what this basically shows is practices that were shown to within the demographic groups of our particular students in our particular classrooms over a 3-year period, which ones led to gains in either CSAT, Scantron, or both. And so the highlighted ones there are the ones that had statistical significance in leading to higher growth scores in those particular areas. And I would argue that that's the way data should be used. We're not talking about anything right now except using data to pinpoint for our particular students what's going to lead to higher levels of increased achievement. And so basically, in a crux, the idea of this presentation is if we had, let me go to that side, if we thought about this research and design process up front, no matter the policy or innovation that we implemented, we may be able to more effectively influence policy implementation in the future. Increase systems effectiveness and efficiency. I use formative assessment here. It doesn't have to be formative assessment. It could be busing issues. How did that affect the money that was saved versus getting some qualitative data of how it affects the community and looking at the work there, stuff like that. Looking in different departments. I mean, it doesn't have to be just as far as it goes to with academics. So this, and the last really part is that we could be able to develop kind of a resource bank for innovations within the district that would kind of show which particular innovations work with certain populations of students. So if Monty has, in his zone, has a great innovation at a particular level with a certain demographic of students, Sean could come in and see that and say, hey, I got a demographic of students that look, that are very similar to that, having the same issues, and can pull from that as well, and have a higher increased rate of possible success than just everyone going out on their own and trying to find different things to target this same issue. So, and the last thing is that this type of process, I feel, we could start to proactively address some of these implementation barriers, especially like running our professional development through some of the rate of adoption lenses before we even start the process. So that's about it.
I got a comment on this. To me, the entire innovation process is getting to what you have, and I would like to expand a little bit on what you're saying. I have been rolling over in my mind for the last year or so on how it is that we can develop a system that's adaptable to change, that empowers teachers, and also that mentors and develops and creates a system for mentoring and developing, and then the implementation of that knowledge into there. And I actually have talked to Tammy about it. I've mentioned it to Henry. I've talked to Chuck about it. I don't think we've talked too much about it. But what I originally thought about was called innovative universities. And the concept is so close to what you're saying. I've sensed somewhat, after getting feedback, I've talked with people around the state. I've got a couple other state board people that we're talking with. But what it is exactly what you're talking about. We need to create a system inside of the district. And how we could do that, to do exactly what you're saying about, is through a particular school. We could focus on, and I'll try to be as brief as I can here, but I've been thinking about this and researching this for quite a while. But we could create a school, maybe do it from 3rd grade, 4th, and 5th grade, where you could have longitudinal studies, and where our best and brightest teachers, teachers who have had tremendous amount of success inside the classroom, we could move them into these particular schools. And I know the first thing people are thinking is how you fund it. I'll tell you how you could do that. You could move teachers into these schools. Inside of that schools, and I've already had some initial contacts with Colorado State University, University of Colorado, a few other programs, where we could actually take these bright teachers, move them into this program, and allow them to actually work on their master's and doctorate degree programs inside of these schools. And actually, they would follow those students from 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, because that's where we know we have the greatest amount of impact on the hearts of those children, and on the ability for them to adapt that for future, and continued success. So your program here of identifying these things could funnel right into that school and actually find its way into implementation. One of the things that have always challenged me about the educational system is that it is based off of, if you're a great teacher, where can you get promoted? Out of the classroom. you can become the next vice principal or the next principal or the next director or the next superintendent. And by the time you've gone through that whole chain, you've been out of the classroom for 15 to 18 years. 5 to 6 generations of children have gone by, and now you have the authority to actually make change. It's crazy. So what we have to develop within this program, and I think you're right on it, is that we have to give teachers a meaningful opportunity to expand on their teaching role. Create a culture within the district that says, you're a great teacher, and you can find a career path as a great teacher. It's not, I don't really want to be a vice president, principal, so I'm just going to stay in the classroom for 20 years and not go anywhere. Now, not that you're not having a meaningful experience with children and having an impact on their lives. My point is that you take those, you give these teachers an opportunity to move on through the teaching mechanism. They go into this university. They have the opportunity to do tremendous amount of research. They gather the greatest amount of research in there, and they get paid to do this. This isn't something that after you've worked 12 hours, we want you to go home and spend another 3 hours working on this. But you actually get paid to go into this university. You implement those, you learn those. And then what do they do when they graduate from those schools? They go in and implement those successes that they've had. They become master teachers, and those teachers now maybe they're assigned we would have to decide this as a group, but maybe they are just teachers over just math. Maybe they're just literature, or maybe they're just collective teachers who say these are teaching practices that work. Now they're going in and out of schools. One of the great challenges I think that we have in the educational system is not just that we have great ideas, but we don't have the ability to translate those consistently into the classroom, so that the evaluatory process, you talked about evaluating these and making sure there's, now you have a group, a core of teachers who have spent 2 or 3 years implementing these practices, gaining the knowledge of those practices, and now they can go into the classrooms and they can synchronize those evaluations. So now you've got, if it's done by particular paradigm, you have a math teacher that can go into any 3rd grade math class and evaluate consistently across the board and teach meaningful items. You have a career path for teachers now that strengthens their desire to be great teachers, not to become great administrators. And we all know that just because you're a great teacher doesn't mean you're going to be a great dean. It means you're a great teacher. So why not reward that? Create a culture where you can be successful as a great teacher. And not only that, but if you're a great teacher, you're a great person, interactive person. You're a great communicator. You're a great evaluator of where skill sets are and what the needed steps are for those. This type of center of excellence, university of innovation, whatever it is, offers that one opportunity. I think, in my opinion, one of the most valuable things besides the IT, which I think correlates all this together, is there has to be, I think as a district, we've got to get on the forefront of making teachers the most valuable resource, and they have to generate. One of the strengths that I think of that is typically policy comes from the top down. It's people like us sitting here saying, well, I think that's going to work. And where does that information that we get? It gets funneled through all these people who've been out of the classroom for decades. A university setting like that would give teachers a true, meaningful voice in changing policy. One of the things I asked Wagner was, how do you give teachers a meaningful voice to change policy? This type of mentoring, developing program, as well as track, a true professional track as a teacher, would give them the opportunity to change policy at the board level instantaneously. And why is that? Because they can do exactly what you did. They can come in here and throw all these data out here and say, I can prove this works. To me, that's the evolution of this innovation thing. It truly becomes a powerhouse developer of teachers, a true ability to tell teachers that not only is your value in that classroom meaningful, but you can make more money of it. I mean, we're all people. We all realize that we want to be recognized for good work. Now, a lot of people do it for altruistic reasons. I know that. That's why they're out there doing this. But to create a path for them, a logical path like this, with your type of knowledge and stuff. Now, my question is, if we came to a conclusion where we could implement something like that. Now, I told you I would tell you how to finance it. Here's how you finance it. One of the challenges you have with backpack funding is, and I was in the IL meeting with Don the other day, and he said, well, okay, well, you know, Sand Creek is here and Power Zone is here, you know, they have more kids there. Well, where do you take the money from? And when do you take the money? Well, what you do is you nominalize that across the board. Now the extra teachers that you have in there as a district, because one of the things I love Henry is so impassioned about is making sure that this runs as a district. The zones are fantastic, you get the focus and stuff, but how do we bring it all together? This is how you bring it all together. Through that backpack funding piece, you nominalize all of that, and now you have the extra funds from 5, 6 different teachers to push into this program. The other piece of it is through the IT network and being able to soft copy most of these. How much money could you save if all you had to do is buy a software package for a book? Instead of spending, tell me, how much did we spend? $785,000 on those math books?
Yeah, in 1 year.
In 1 year. You take those kind of funds and push them down. The interesting thing I think about all of that is that if we do true backpack funding, and you've already put in a security blanket in there to make sure that, you know, hey, as soon as your quarter goes up, you got a $200,000, $180,000 variance in there, this program could push money into there. The interesting thing is that when each one of those zones begin to grow, now you have, through these center of excellences, these small university settings, you have teachers that you could pull out and actually push into these as substitute teachers until, say, Falcon, which is growing, or maybe Sand Creek, which is shrinking, until you can move those around to get in there. And you're putting the best and brightest teachers into those classrooms for small periods of time. So my point is I'm going to continue to research this. At some point, I want to come back and present the board with this initial, just like I did when the innovation thing first started. This is, in my opinion, this could be a true mechanism for empowering teachers to make meaningful change in policy, to have true educational opportunities, because also part of that university or center of excellence is that teachers can go through there and get their certifications. So no longer do teachers have to do that on the weekend or take time off of school, use their vacation time to get certified. They can go right into these schools, and our best and brightest teachers are certifying all these teachers back up through there, through their educational professional development. So anyway, when you put this out, I was like, that's exactly what I've been thinking for so long now, you know. So anyway, I'll continue to do some research on that. I know that, you know, a lot of you have already said you want to hear, you know, where I've gone on that, where that's going. But I think what you're doing, in my opinion, is on the avant-garde of creating something for teachers that will truly make it a meaningful opportunity for advancement, for growth, and greater appreciation. And it will take the focus off administration. I mean, in order to do that, this is just me, but I would even be willing to contract out secretaries and administrative people within the schools if that's what would save the money to push it back into teacher development, you know, and take the focus off of becoming an administrator. If you want to become an administrator, great, more power to you. But the focus in an educational environment ought to be education and development of teachers and the strength and courage and stamina of that process and a little bit of the attaboy, you know, for being a great teacher. So anyway, I've been thinking on that for probably 12 to 18 months, and I think, in my opinion, just like the innovation process was the kickstart to this, the end result, in my opinion, is this type of program. This may not be it, but something similar to it has got to be pushed forward. And you're right on the avant-garde of that. So
I never would have believed you were thinking about that for 18 months.
I've been thinking about that for long. When I was doing the research for the innovation period, that was in my mind on how to empower teachers. And exactly what you're talking, professional development. I ran this by Becky. I ran it by Becky Carter, and she was like, that is a solution to our challenge. So anyway.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Vice President.
I know,
Dave Watson.
9.03, our student safety.
Now, this is my passion, and when I get to going, I don't want nobody to say anything, okay? When I give my hour dissertation, I don't want nobody to know. I want my fair time. I want my fair time on the air too.
You won't give me. I won't give you any complaints.
Just to start this off a little bit, this is the second topic that we're talking about in the matrix management. We talked about modular buildings and stuff the last couple months, and talking with Don and Dave, we thought it was a great opportunity now to bring in student safety, student wellness, and to start that discussion about how, in this environment where we have autonomy in the schools, how this becomes a shared responsibility and a shared resource that we are using. And so Dave's going to go through that, kind of also tell you what we are doing, and then go through what he sees in the system, and where the schools are participating with their local staffs, whereas the principals, the counselors, psychologists, et cetera, and where his department of him is participating.
Okay, I'm Dave Watson. I'm the coordinator of the Safety and Emergency Department, and tonight I'm here to talk to you about just exactly what Brett said. I've handed each one of you a folder and a very nicely rainbow-colored flip chart. Those are in every single classroom. The stuff in the folder is also some information items that has gone home to parents, as well as available in the schools, lobbies, wherever the school principal has put those. I Love You Guys Foundation posters, one of the posters found inside of the classroom as well. You will not find my PowerPoint presentation in there. I started this presentation like a week and a half ago on my Dell laptop, because I'm using a dual platform because of our surveillance camera system. And today, when Loretta asked me if I was going to give copies, I went to my drive to print those out, and it wouldn't open. So I had to recreate this afternoon at like 4 o'clock on my Mac, and so therefore you will not have copies of this.
They were in our packet.
They were in your packet? Okay,
yes,
good.
I read through.
Yeah, they were, I was going to say that.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
I've read the whole thing.
Oh, good. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah. You should have just asked us. We would have given it.
Late. It's like 11,
Yeah,
12.
we could have pulled it right out of our packet for you.
I can do it without it if need to be. Okay, so tonight, and I'm going to throw a lot of stuff at you tonight, because when Brett and I sat down, we brainstormed a bunch of things. There's a lot going on in the district that I'm proud of, to say that our administrators and our staff are doing wonderful things for our students and our community. But tonight, the key points I'm going to hit on is the physical security of our schools and our school sites, or admin building as well, student and staff safety, and then student wellness. Okay. Physical security. We're going to talk about surveillance cameras, our Raptor system, our security staff, current staffing, and our buzz-in entry system. So the first one is our surveillance camera system. We have approximately 268 cameras in the district now. Made up of that 268 is about a dozen analog cameras that are still in use at mostly our elementary schools. We are in the process of replacing some things. I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. But I do want to let you know that the federal grant from 2007, we received a Readiness Emergency Management for Schools grant. And that's what originally my position was funded through as well in 2007. And then I was hired on to ensure that this federal grant funds were utilized in the manner that we were assigned them. So the greatest influence of our influx of surveillance cameras in the district came from that federal grant to establish that within our schools. We currently use an ONSSI system, and that is basically an IP-based system where we pay for licensing so that we can view our surveillance cameras online, as opposed to them being in some other type of system. But I'm going to tell you some challenges of that here in a minute. And here it comes. One school, Sand Creek High School, has transitioned back to an on-site capability. And the reason this came up, last year when we were experiencing the bandwidth issues and the sharing of technology being streamed through, all these different places, high schools becoming the hubs of this information, we found out Sand Creek High School, being one of the main hubs, suffered greatly. And my cameras at that school were not operating at their full function. So I met with CCS, Timo being spearheading that project. We all met. At the time, Steve Roth, the principal, assistant principal of Sand Creek High School, we were brainstorming some ideas of how we could correct that. But because of the bandwidth being the way it was, we literally had to shut down 16 surveillance cameras at Sand Creek High School to try to accommodate that bandwidth issue. But it didn't stop there. We continued to brainstorm and see how can we make this work. So what we came back to was maybe we need to get off of the IP network and stop bogging down the internet usage and leave it for the education side of the house and go back to on-site MVR, DVR recording systems. And the advantage of doing that is we don't have to, and let me go back a second. I just talked to Timo yesterday. We had a meeting to discuss the platform that we are looking at going district-wide. And he basically told me the Vista Ridge Zone server had gone down. He acted like a doctor would in an emergency room and was able to bring that back up for me, but I don't know how much life is left. Okay, so that's why we're going in this direction. So as I mentioned, Sand Creek High School, realizing that that school was where my original challenge started from, we started thinking, okay, what are our next capabilities? How can we keep this separated from our IP issue? So we went out and talked to several companies. We had them come in. We started thinking about iCloud. We started talking about the MVR, DVR, another IP option other than ONSSI, and we basically came back to a platform of the MVR, DVR servers at each school. And basically what that allows us to do is to go from an IP-based, which is solely IP, okay, back to the MVR, DVR, allowing us to have over 4 weeks worth of storage and archive video footage, okay, that we could go back where if we're on an extended break over the summer, something like that, we can go back further, whereas we have our challenges with the current ONSI system. And I just did an assessment the other day, and 95% of our school is only at 1 week recording time. I had one school, which baffles me, is at 8 weeks. So I'm not sure how that happens, but one was at 8 weeks, and I have other ones that are 1 day, 1 week, all the way to 2 weeks to 8 weeks. So we are working on that. So that gets me to the bottom one, the capital request. This past year, I went to the capital funding committee and I said, I need some funding so that I can correct our issues with our surveillance system. And this is what I need. This is the vision that I have. Not just myself, but working with CCS professionals, Blake and Timo. We talked about this, and we implemented it with one school at Sand Creek High School. Sand Creek High School has now transitioned over to a platform where they have strictly MVR, DVR capabilities. And what's great about this, it's interactive mapping. An administrator can go in to their computer, and there's a site map, just like you would find on the wall over there for the emergency. And it can have cameras pinpointed on that map, and all you got to do is hover your mouse over it, and it'll show you that camera live immediately. So that's the platform we went to. I do have to say, after doing that, and after going through all those briefings with this company, the one thing I learned the other day when we sat down to do a train-the-trainer at Sand Creek High School, I trained the SRO, 2 admin, and a security officer on the system so they could go back and teach the admin, the rest of the team, how to use it. One snafu came up, that it's not fully compatible with our Apple Mac system like we were told. There's limitations. And those limitations are, you can't finagle or manipulate any of the cameras, and you cannot record. It has to be on a Windows-based machine to do that. So we're working through that issue with the company since we were told that it was Apple and Mac compatible because we knew that was the direction the district was going in. So I am in constant contact with this company, and we are rectifying that situation so that we can move forward. And there's been talk of a dual platform, switching over to Dell, or using the Mac and switching over to a Windows platform. I expressed that it might not be a good idea for administrators who are extremely busy. So we've got some ideas on the table, and we're working through those. But I wanted to be completely honest with you guys of how that project has turned out. It's been really good, but there was a setback when we found out about the Apple compatibility just last week when we had the training.
Was that in the contract that said it was Apple compatible?
Yes, in their quote, it said that they were compatible with Apple and Mac, and that's why we chose them. And then even the Avant Datacom, the company out of Denver that we went through, I saw his facial expression when the tech guy from this company said, well, and he was like, and I was like, what? So we are working through that, and we will, as we implement that program further in the future, we will ensure that that's not going to be, hopefully will not be an issue. Okay, our Raptor visitor check-in system. It is currently in every single school but Patriot Learning Center and Falcon Virtual Academy. Not for a lack of trying, Dave Kanoki, the principal here, has come to me. He does want to purchase one. Falcon High School had an extra one, but they decided they want to start using two, which I fully support because it's working for them with their visitors. We were going to take the old one from Falcon High and take it to Virtual Academy. Since they're using two, we're going to get them a new system here. And just so that I can back up a little bit, the Raptor Visitor Check-in system is utilized as a way to track who's coming in and out of your building. And the only way you pass basically through the main office is you have to present a state ID, state-issued identification card. Your information is either scanned with that driver's license with a scanner that we have attached to the system, or they input your stuff if you have an out-of-state ID that doesn't have the swiper on the back of it to record data. They input it manually. And what this check is doing is it's checking a national database to see if you're a sexual offender registered anywhere in the United States.
Okay. Dave, is it CCCI based and NCCI based, NCIC based?
Negative. It is not. It's only registered sex offenders.
Okay,
it's not.
So you could be a burger, it wouldn't cover that.
Right.
Okay.
You could be wanted felon for homicide, and we wouldn't be able to know. This is only tracking national database of sex offenders.
Okay.
It's been in use in the district since 2010. I phased it in at different levels, and I'm proud to say that last year we got it into every school, except for PLC, and I've offered it to Patriot Learning Center, but they did not want it. So those are the only two schools currently that do not have it. Like I said, it was phased in. There's an annual licensing fee that I pay out of my budget, about $450 per unit. That supports the ongoing annual cost of having that system in your schools. The one additional cost that I pay for and I assist the schools with is the actual visitor roll tape, because what it does is once you put that person's information in the computer, their picture comes up on the screen, tells you who they are, and you push print, and it prints out the ID tag with their picture on it, so you know who's in your building. And I said driver's license required before. Okay, go ahead. Thanks, Blake. All right, let's talk about our district security staff. We have SROs in the district, school resource officers. They are through the Colorado Springs Police. We have one at Vista Ridge High School and one at Sand Creek High School. We have one through the El Paso County Sheriff, and that deputy is assigned at Falcon High School. I should also mention that these school resource officers also serve our district feeder schools. So they don't just sit idle at a high school. They are in constant contact or available by the principals and staff at our elementary level, middle level, and high school. And they do, yes, sir.
What are we paying for those SROs? Are we paying for the cars? Are we paying for the MDCs? Are we paying, what is the district paying for?
Okay, in your packet.
And all those things operational inside those patrol
I did not put it in your packet because The El Paso County Sheriff's Office and myself and Brett are working through an issue right now. We were contracted with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office to pay $71,375 for a year for that school resource officer, and that was only salary and benefits, okay? After we signed the IGA, or the contract, and submitted it back to them, just last week I got another email from the bureau chief at the sheriff's office saying that the sheriff had reconsidered and he wanted to charge us $78,370. I immediately took it to Brett and Don and said, this is an issue, and we talked about it, and an email went out yesterday to the bureau chief and to the sheriff expressing some of our ideas about that, trying to change the contract.
Okay. And you may not, they're getting pretty tight for dollars.
Yes.
And I don't know why everybody else feels that. I believe SRO is needed in the school.
Absolutely.
But I just want to make sure that the car, when the car comes and when the MDC is up, so that officer, if he need to, or he or she need to go out to the car, run that individual, pull up a criminal activity, do whatever they need to do in the car on site, not getting dispatched and try to push that information down to them.
Absolutely, and that is where the increase came through El Paso County. And I have to back up and also mention that cost through El Paso County Sheriff 2 years ago was over $86,000. I went to the sheriff, and with my continued affiliation being a reserve deputy with the sheriff's office, and talking to him about budget concerns and everything else, we negotiated a price back down to $71,000. But now, like you said, it's gotten tight with the funding, and they realized that they needed to increase, and that's where the increase came in. It is covering fuel, the car, the MDC, the personal equipment that they actually issue to the deputy.
Yeah.
But we are working through that contractual issue currently as we speak.
Is Colorado Springs based off MDCs, or do they have CAD in the computers in the office that we give them?
They have a tough book like we used to have in our cars.
Okay.
And Officer Sack, he carries it right into the school with him.
Okay.
And they're very helpful. And I should say the Colorado Springs Police contract, we pay $97,280 a year for 2 SROs.
Because they get paid more than the sheriff anyway.
Yes, but they also are working on a grant program. That's why we signed a 5-year IGA with them.
Okay.
That cost will not increase.
Okay.
And that was for 2.
That's for 2 SROs
So it's
at
45
$97,000
per versus 70.
But again, it's based off of a grant that they have matching funds with, so we're only paying 75%.
Okay.
And that's how we're able to pay less for 2 Springs police officers than 1 for 1 county, because the county doesn't have that. They tried, and they didn't get it.
Yeah.
That was like 2 years ago. Henry, if you remember, we tried to get that with the sheriff's office. Sorry.
Are we monitoring the parking lots and stuff too?
As far as with our SROs?
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to go just to IT.
With IT?
Yeah. And I know this is a passive system, which means we just record what's out there,
Okay.
and somebody can review it later
Sure.
if there's an incident. But I know there's some software out there that allows you to have an interactive system where it will actually identify, for instance, in Kansas City about 2 years ago, a man literally, he had M16s on him, a grenade launcher. He was walking across the parking lot with this. And I know that there's technology out there that will scan stuff and make it interactive, so it can actually pick out, hey, that's a weapon. So it'll actually identify the possibility of a weapon, take a snap picture of that, send it to somebody like yourself, where you can click on it and say, oh, that is something significant.
Right.
Where the speed with which we can address those issues increases incrementally.
Sure, there's a lot of technology out there, and Timo and Blake, when they sat in this briefing, one of those technology-based companies came to us, and their quote was over $350,000.
Cost is significant.
It was very costly, and so we had to be like, whoa, okay. So you're absolutely correct, Mr. Wright. There is. The one thing that our cameras can do is it's motion censored. Therefore, it's not recording dead space in the middle of the night. And what we can do with this newer system at Sand Creek High School, they even showed us in the screen that you can go to it and say, I want to see any activity that occurred in these 4 cameras between the hours of midnight and 2 a.m., and it'll come up and show you which one showed motion. And then you can go directly to those cameras.
Okay. Can you for the buildings, okay, can you kind of work motion, glass breakage, and then go to critical points in your building, go to critical points in the building with your camera, maybe even go outside with infrared, at critical entry point, but then put glass breakage sensors where.
I haven't seen that technology with surveillance cameras. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, because I'm not 100% sure to answer that question.
Okay.
But I do know we have our motion sensors as with advanced alarm that also senses motion, as well as glass breakage in some circumstances. Like we're looking, and when we did our assessment of this building, we looked at putting glass breakage sensors in here because of all the glass classrooms.
I guess I would want the critical entry points covered with cameras, but then put motion sensors in and have maybe, and the district have to look at that, have an off-site guard company that monitors those motion sensors for us. So, so they can respond quicker, because I can assure you law enforcement response time is going to go way down here pretty soon.
Absolutely.
Okay, and if there's not a suspect on scene, and if they're tied down with another critical call, they're not going to respond to glass breakage. So, have you looked at that?
I can address that. I have met with Larry Borland. He's a chief executive of security at Academy School District 20, and I asked him if there was any way that they may be able to assist us, because our current system is, if we receive an alarm in the middle of the night, a building custodian or building manager gets the call out from advanced alarm, and they respond to the building. I understand the reason for that, and I understand why that was implemented many, many years ago through previous administrators and directors. But I'm looking at a safer way of response, and people that are actually trained to respond. And I'm a department of 1, so I don't have that department that can respond. So I started brainstorming. Talked with Larry Borland. He has a 24-hour armed security roving patrol. So we talked about an IGA of where they would be able to monitor our surveillance cameras and receive the calls from an advanced alarm, and they would immediately be able to go into their cars or on patrol, see one of our surveillance cameras at that school where that alarm occurred, and then respond and check our building for us.
Are we currently sending unarmed civilians into a building?
Yes.
Right? Are we currently doing that right now?
That is correct. We are. We are the building custodian / building manager, the on-call person.
Okay.
That is currently our practice.
And I'm not going to get into it tonight, but that is something that probably need to be spoken.
Absolutely.
That is a liability that you are waiting to happen, that you are sending an unarmed civilian into a potential burglary with arms.
And that's why we are brainstorming this, and I also contacted Raven Security yesterday. I left him a message. He called me back. I called him back today. We're playing phone tag, but I'm also looking at that external security patrol presence.
I'll leave with your boss. That's a liability. We send an unarmed civilian, unarmed employees into a potential dangerous zone.
Tracking. Our school security personnel. Currently, we have, each high school has 3 security personnel. I think Vista Ridge just hired their 3rd person. Is that correct, Bob? They just hired their 3rd person because they had an employee did return after last year after getting hurt. Our middle schools, an initiative that I brought to the board several years ago, I asked for security positions at each one of our middle schools. The seated board at that time approved that request, and each school implemented the program by adding a security position in their school. Currently, Skyview Middle School and Falcon Middle School has taken it upon themselves, and they found additional funding within their budget, and they created a 2nd position. Okay? Horizon Middle School, I guess it was a year and a half or so ago when the implementation of the innovation started, they chose to go a different route, and they have, after speaking with Sean Dorsey about this, they have added additional staff members inside their classrooms, as well as a dean to complement the replacement of a security officer. That is going to be, I can tell you, continued conversations in the future. Just met with Mr. Dorsey a couple days ago about this, and we're going to continue to talk about that, about the bringing back that actual security position back at Horizon Health.
Do you have data that shows the amount of call for service for Horizon? Has Horizon had a rise of call for service from deputies?
No.
Okay.
I have seen data, to answer your question, Mr. Allen, but there has not been an increase since they cut the security position.
Okay.
I'm in constant contact with the SRO, and I should take a step back for the school resource officer. Horizon Middle School does have an assigned school resource officer part-time, like 4 hours a week. This SRO is not paid for by the district. They are assigned there through the sheriff. There was an initiative they put into place a long time ago, and that SRO serves several school districts. Peyton, and ours. Right. So we have to share him, but we're not paying for him. Yeah. And even speaking with him, and then even with getting the calls from the principal or the building administrators every time an incident occurs, I can tell you since the implementation of the security officer and taking the security officer position away, I personally have not seen an increase of any major crime. I mean, they still have their, their fighting and stuff like that. But I've been assured that this dean, and by adding other personnel within the school, has helped assist with that as well.
That's a responsibility IL takes on himself. That's it.
Absolutely, and we are continuing to talk about that. The last item up there is a backup for my position. I am still currently in the Colorado National Guard, and it does require me to go away for training at times. So I've met with Mr. Beeger and Mr. Ridgway about training an individual, whether they're within the district, and that's probably the best way to go, that has an idea of law enforcement and school security, and train them up on the tasks and allow them to fill in for me if and when I have to go for a 2 or 3 week period of time with the Colorado National Guard on a training mission, or if I am on vacation or something like that. I usually work my vacations around the school break, so that's really not that big of an issue. But that conversation has occurred and will continue in the future. I have someone in mind. I have spoken with this person. This person is in agreement. They would not mind doing it. I've spoken with their assistant principal at the school. There's not an issue there. So it's just continuing our talks at the administrative level here and trying to make that happen.
Dave, what are your training for your security? What type of training do we provide for your security persons as far as dealing with assaults before law enforcement arrives, dealing with what are they required for any type of particular?
Sure, absolutely, and I can address that. There is a national recognized training out there through the Crisis Prevention Institute. It's a de-escalation training. There's a verbal component to it as well as a physical component. All security officers are required to go through that training, but I do want to take a step back, and a couple of years ago I brought forward to a previous administration a request for a week-long training for all district security. And again, I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus, but it just, because of the time that was needed, the allocation of time, it did not happen. And that training was going to happen in collaboration with Academy School District 20.
Okay.
And we were going to get together with all of our security groups, and we were going to do a 40-hour training class, and it was going to be based on school law, defensive tactics, all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
So what I'm bringing to you, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's here in my notes, I want to try to bring that back into an implementation, but I need the support at your level, because currently our security officers, and this is also in my presentation, It's site-based management, and I'm not asking to change that. I'm just asking for a collaborative effort. Okay, and I'm also asking, instead of them being just restricted, and this is going to be a funding issue, instead of them just being restricted to student contact days, allow me to have them on staff development days. Because they are staff, and they need to have their skills developed.
And I'll say, take it to your bosses, and I'll pass it to the board and the folks here, that if an unfortunate situation where hands does goes on to students, I prefer that they don't, but if hands-on go to students and students are injured, the first thing you're going to be looked at is what type of training that your security personnel have in order to do that.
Absolutely.
Also, and this is my last comment, I promise you, for the night, and I just ask you to think about it, and everybody please don't go wild on me. Because I know there are several school districts in the Colorado Springs area that had armed guards on campus. And if you would get with your bosses and come back and research that, I would like to see, this is not a board action, but I would like to see the feasibility. I'm just concerned, even with the thing that happened in Aurora. I like for us to, of all schools, to not cover with law enforcement, that we have someone on the ground that can begin to start protecting our children before law enforcement respond. Back in the days when I was a school resource officer out east, I had assault weapons and things in the car, but I could be 30 minutes away, and there could be a lot of damage done before I got back. So that's my last look at that. That's my last.
I agree 100%. I know you and I, we've talked about that before, and I will be bringing that forward here in the future. Just know that when that request comes, there's a lot of responsibility, liability, and training that goes with that. And I am not afraid to undertake that challenge.
Amen.
I know we can take it on, and I know it can be successful. It's just, again, it comes from the backing of the district.
Okay.
When you bring that forward too, can you make sure that if there's any policies at the board level that needs to be changed, that's addressed?
Absolutely, and there will be in Colorado state law. The state law says that individuals are not allowed to be armed on school district property. Only peace officers. And then the caveat to that is if it's written into their job description and it's made board policy.
Exactly.
So that is absolutely correct.
Hey, Brad, is it possible to get waivers for that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it is.
At the state level?
Well, not at the state level. You can write it into your own policy.
Right. If you have a staff member that you want to be armed, because we are protected under state law that says if you have a school employee that is to be armed, you have to implement the policy and put it into place that you're going to have them armed.
And that question was actually addressed to, if we get this done, which I know we can we set a precedence for other schools? That's where I was going with that.
Well, we can certainly try, but I can tell you, and I'm not going to try to get too far into the subject because I want to save for what I'm going to present to you in the future, but currently Colorado Springs School District 11 and Academy School District 20 do have armed security both in uniform and concealed.
And so does Widefield
Their Director of Security, John Morse. I just met with Harrison School District 2's Jerry the other day. He's armed. He asked me, because I belong to a group called CASLEO. It's Colorado Association for School Security Law Enforcement Officers. And we meet monthly, and I get this all the time. They're like, Dave, you armed yet? Dave, you armed yet? No, I'm not armed. But we are continuing to work on it, is my answer.
Is Littleton armed?
Littleton is armed.
Right, so when they had the middle school shooting, wasn't it the armed person in the school?
He wasn't armed, but he tackled him. It was a teacher, basically. So.
Who all has roving night security?
Currently, Colorado Springs School District 11 has a roving security patrol 24 hours, as well as Academy School District 20, and Harrison School District 2 on a very limited part-time basis.
I've run into him.
What's that?
No, I've had to deal with him at 9 or 10
o'clock. Okay. And I know one of them. He's a former security officer.
District 11 tried to hire me when I retired from the sheriff's office. They tried to hire me to be one of them.
Where's it? Okay, Buzz. Right. Oh, you got it to work? Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay, the last one on our physical security is Buzz-in entry system. This has been in use since approximately 2007. They were experimented prior to my arrival here. 1 or 2 locations had that, but once we got the grant, we really went full speed ahead, and every location got it. Okay? Again, it's used in all schools, but Falcon and Vista Ridge High Schools, and that is because we have a funneled-in approach. You cannot get into the main building without going to the main office. That's the reason they don't have the buzz-in entry. Patriot Learning Center currently does not have it. We are working on some dynamics up there because of the college partnership that we have and the multiple entries. So we're working through some issues. I just spoke with the chief of police just last week with some issues that I'm seeing. So we're working on a collaborative effort to try to control some things up there that we've identified. Current upgrades are needed throughout the district. Since they had been in existence for the last 5 years, we are seeing that these systems are starting to fail. And these parts to these systems are getting harder and harder to come by. They found one company out in California that has a very skeleton-sized portion of these parts. So we're looking at upgrading, and we're going to utilize Vista Ridge High School as the testing grounds for a newer, updated swipe or entry, if you will. And the challenge that's going to require, and I know I mentioned this to a couple of the board members the other day when we talked, that the current ID card system that we have on the newer technology will not work. So when we start talking about budgeting and expense, we're going to have to start looking at, as we phase these into different schools, we're either going to, A, have to start over with a new ID badge, or they're going to carry a double key card access like we did at the sheriff's office.
Dave, I am really concerned, and I'll pass it on to the board, that Falcon and Vista Ridge, here's why I'm concerned about their, you say they can't go without going through the area there. People kill receptionists also. And it's not the fact that, here's my concern. There are several times that I know there's a violent guy that I've had contact with over by the Falcon High School where I've had to put guns on and where I had to tase. And a couple times he ran. And most of the time, bad guys like to run to where they think they can get hostages. And school is the primary place to grab hostages and to go through a building that you don't have to be buzzed in while a cop is in hot pursuit. I'm just saying,
okay.
That leaves me nervous, but that's the ideal world.
That's a fair assessment, Mr. Allen, and I can tell you those systems are in place at those schools. Falcon High and both Vista Ridge have the card access there at the door with the buzzer in place. It just has not been implemented because of the funnel and approach. We can look at an assessment and going that full direction.
That's just my concern.
Okay.
And Vista Ridge is in a neighborhood area right now. Somebody run, cop chasing, run through the front door. If he hit that door and he keep running, he's in a building.
Sure. And
he's in a building with children.
It's a valid point, and it's very well noted, I can assure you.
Right. That was my concern. I'm finished with it.
Let's talk about student staff security. With that grant that we had in 2007, we were required to come up with or draft an emergency operations plan. And that plan has been in existence since early 2008 when I started getting into the nuts and bolts of the I'm going to call it the EOP, and collaborating with our community, our local law enforcement, our fire services crews, and our Office of Emergency Management, both at the city level and the county level. So we do have that currently in place. I can tell you that this past summer I started working on a revision to that to make it a little bit easier. There's plans over fall break to meet with Deputy Murphy up at Falcon High School to continue streamlining that and to come up. I've got a really good, it's called a crisis workbook, and I got it from the Fairfax County Public Schools in Virginia. It looks awesome, and I'm excited about that possible transition to that more collaborative workbook for our staff. The next one down is that poster that you have in your packet there, the I Love You Guys Standard Response Protocols. We have gone to that. That was nationally recognized as well as in the state by the Colorado School Safety Resource Center. The Colorado Springs Police Department recommended it, and because it's a standard response protocol, meaning what you see right there in front of you, a lockout, secure perimeter, lockdown, locks lights out of sight, and that common language cannot be confused with the law enforcement community if it's common. And that's the direction we went into. Emergency drills. This kind of ties in with the last piece there, that Senate bill, so I don't want to get too much into that. But the emergency drills are required, mandatory, monthly, and quarterly for some of them, which I'll just tell you right now. Every month, the school has to conduct a fire drill. Once a quarter, they have to, I'm requiring, it was originally once a semester, but I've asked for once a quarter to conduct some type of lockdown, lockout drill. So those drills are being conducted. Training, getting back to what we were just talking about. The Crisis Prevention Institute, CPI. I am an instructor for that. I have the honor and the privilege to really get into the schools and meet some fabulous staff members, especially our paras and our special, the other special education staff members, and what a special group of people. One thing that I can tell you about this CPI training is, and I mentioned this to Dr. Kim Boyd, we might want to start thinking about another model. This training takes 8 hours to conduct. I wouldn't say it's the most expensive training. It costs $16 per person for the beginning and $12 to do a refresher every year thereafter. The time piece being the most crucial, because it's an 8-hour training and then 4 hours within a year after that. And because we've increased how many people get that, the logistical piece of the time and staff development with the critical need to continue education for our teachers, it really starts, I don't want to say it conflicts, but it starts, people got to cancel the training because they've got to attend this. So we're looking at some different models, myself and Kim Boyd, she's really helping me out with that. So I just wanted to throw that to you guys.
Well, and quite a few of the educational staff are classified as well who go through that, which means on staff development days, many of them are not paid to be there.
Absolutely.
So many of our paraprofessionals will volunteer to take that training on their own time, and they're our lowest paid people
Right.
in the district.
And I'm working through that right now with homeschool out at the homeschool building. I'm training them at the end of this month, I think the 27th. I'm doing a 1-on-4 type of training just to get them done. I'm doing the same thing for Vista Ridge High School. Some individuals need a refresher course, so I'm working with them to come in at like 1.5-hour increments in the morning before school starts, so that we can try to meet their needs.
Yeah, but, and my point on everyone though is there are many people taking that training on their own time who
Yes.
we should be paying to take that training, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Especially if they're only paid $9 or $10 an hour.
They should, I'm sorry to interrupt, but they really should, these are special education paras, a lot
Yeah.
of them. And they need to be trained before school starts.
Yes. And that's the challenge we are currently facing, and I have talked with HR about this, and everyone's well aware of this. It's how, and just so I can give you a blueprint real quick, I am one of 2 instructors in the district besides transportation. Transportation has 1. All of our other trained instructors have left the district. It's myself and Heather out of finance, and her restrictions of being able to teach is extremely difficult. So I'm working with Amy and Kathleen Jackson to send some additional folks to the training class in October up in Denver. So we've identified some individuals to try to get them off the training so that we can increase the training classes so that we can meet everyone's needs. But you're absolutely correct, Mr. Police, that we've got to hit these individuals before they get into our classrooms, because it could be a liability. The next one down, Senate Bill 08181, that kind of ties in everything that's just above it. There is a copy of that Senate bill inside your packet. This Senate bill sets aside requirements for training, the emergency drills, your school crisis response teams, and all that kind of stuff. You can read it. I don't want to take too much of your time telling you about it, because you can actually see it in your packet. But just know those are requirements that we have to fulfill at the district level. And at my level, I am responsible for ensuring those things are getting done. And again, I need your support, as well as the Innovation Zone leaders, and I'm getting it, and I'm very thankful for that, but I'm asking that it continues.
Can get with your supervisor and see if they can work somewhere with the president. But I'd like to hear a quarterly briefing on safety.
Absolutely.
If I can, I would, and I don't know if that's the agenda that need to be, but I'd like to hear a quarterly briefing on safety for our district, for our children.
Absolutely. I could do that monthly, and I could also, because
quarterly is good. I don't like
quarterly, monthly, whatever you want, Mr. Allen. But I also have made a request to the school resource officer sergeants, as well as the community relations of the El Paso County Sheriff, to start getting the statistics on a more more timely manner, if you will. I always get them monthly from the Colorado Springs police officers, but I want to start getting more and spread that out to our neighborhoods, because it's starting, we stretch out beyond our school grounds.
For back in the old days, I used to give all the schools copies of the sexual offenders roster. We're allowed to do that. Has the SROs, I would like to have the SROs print out a sexual offender roster, which is allowed, and make sure that's in the high school. So
absolutely, and I will make that request. The one good thing that's going to make that facilitation easier with the Colorado Springs Police Department, that every single one of the SROs are considered detectives, and they are assigned to the sexual offender registry unit.
Yes, great.
So there's a great tie in there, and I can definitely start making that request.
Okay,
No, those are online at this point.
Those are online as well.
I can pull up my neighborhood and see the houses where I don't
But
want my
you know what?
kids to
But
walk
I really think that I really think law enforcement a little bit more. I do think because they have to sign in, and online might not update it all the time this way.
Real quick, I just want to, there are some really good pieces in this student wellness. This is the last category. We have our district policies in place. We're always continuously trying to upgrade those and improve those. Next one down, Rachel's Challenge. I am excited to tell you right now that we have a community event scheduled for Tuesday evening, October 9th at Sand Creek High School, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., and it's one big community collaboration on safety emphasis. And we are bringing Rachel's Challenge back to the community that evening. And to start that event off, we're having Susan Payne, the director of Safe Patel, give a presentation to our parents and community about Safe Patel.
You can send an invite out to the board?
The invite will be out to the board. I just talked to Mindy Quinn about it. She's already worked on a flyer. Her and I have sat down and really brainstormed this event. We've got other communities coming, our community partners coming, Colorado Springs Fire Department. We've got the Colorado Springs, hopefully I'm still waiting on word for their Explorer program. Good. Tesla's coming out, Care and Share is coming out. So all these people and groups are going to be setting up booths for our community.